Welcome, everybody, to Show 119, Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. I'm your handsome host, Gene Walzak, the NFL genius. And to my upper left, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, College Control. How you feeling tonight, Control?
Feeling good, man. Got a lot to go over tonight.
Definitely. Huge wild card weekend. In the upper right corner, I got Scholastic Shally, Uncle Shally, the man that has too many nicknames. Bill
Too many.
Shallcross. How you feeling?
I'm good, bud. I'm good. Wild weekend. That's what we like. Wild card weekend.
Definitely 6 for 6. And if you're noticing, we have a guest with us. If you checked out the Facebook page, the Twitter page, Kelsey Nicole Nelson of Fox Sports, DC Sports Media Person of the Year. She covers the Commanders. She's a Ravens fan. How you feeling tonight, Kelsey? Appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, fellas. Excited to talk football with you, even though many in my neck of the woods probably aren't the happiest because they're not getting to watch their teams go for it. So I'll try to bring the joy for them.
You knew it's funny. The Commanders were right in the playoff hunt in the thick of things. And Kelsey covers DC Sports. She covers the Commanders. They were in the thick of the playoff run. And a former friend of ours turned foe. Carson Wentz I felt like he turned over the season. Like he turns over the football way too many times. But the question I kind of wanted to ask you to start is, do you think that Carson Wentz will be in DC next year? And if you think he will be in DC, what are your feelings of like Ron Rivera coming back and things like that before we get into this playoff week?
Yeah, Carson Wentz is almost like saying curse words right now in Washington, D.C. Like, that's how bad and angry fans are after the performance he put on that really obviously ended the Commanders season. And I think it hurt more because this was a Commanders team that folks felt this was a year that they could get into the playoffs, especially when you see the rest of the division taking off. What a turnaround it's been for the NFC East. And Carson Wentz was supposed to be that veteran quarterback guy. And, you talk about Ron Rivera. And according to Ron Rivera, if you guys remember that primetime game against the Chicago Bears, when a very spirited Ron Rivera went to the microphone and said, hey, Dan Snyder did not bring Carson Wentz in. I brought him in. It really seemed like Ron Rivera put his, I'd say, coaching lifeline on the line for Carson Wentz. And I think that's a large reason why we saw Carson Wentz play that game the way that he played the game. And obviously it didn't turn out well. So, as we talk about Ron Rivera, and there's mixed emotions about him, he's a guy that I think people do genuinely like him as a head coach, right? I mean, no one dislikes Ron Rivera, but he has yet to have a winning season in Washington. Now, he got lucky that 2020 season when he got hired January 2nd of that year. They, of course, went on to win that division, but we know that was a rough year for the NFC East because everybody was losing in that division. So Washington won the division, but with a losing record. But, since then, what does he really, have to prove? He has a young, talented team. But again, a lot of people feeling like he made interesting coaching decisions. He's kept coaches around that folks felt like maybe should not have been there. And again, once again, Washington's, from the outside looking in, and especially in that game when Carson Wentz was struggling early on. I mean, he was picked so early in that game. People started chanting Taylor Heineke super early because they were like, what is going on? Like, this is a game we need to win against a Cleveland Browns team that has nothing to play for but pride and to fill their stats, right? That's all Cleveland had to play for. But lo and behold, Ron kept him in, and we saw how that game ended. And now, once again, Washington fans, we're sick and tired, I'll just say, of being sick and tired in Washington, D.C. We've been to the quarterback carousel. We're supposed to have a guy that promised two things, fellas, when he came in. He said he would change the culture and bring winning ways to Washington. Well, the culture doesn't seem like it's changed that much. I'm talking about the culture in Washington, it seems like almost every other day on some type of show because Washington continues to be in the headline. So that was a failure. And then winning ways to Washington. Well, if you guys haven't noticed lately, Washington's not in the playoffs. So that's also been a failure. So it just feels like everything that he promised, unfortunately, has yet to come to fruition.
And I completely agree with you. Cottrell is a Browns fan, so we were on that game before it happened. I think all three of us picked Cleveland, even though they didn't need to win the football game, because we're like, well, Carson Wentz is starting. They're going to turn the ball over. The last time Carson Wentz played the Cleveland Browns is when he played for Philadelphia in that disastrous 2020 season, and he had more completions to Taki on the Browns defense than he did to any of his wide receivers that game. So we kind of seen that coming too. I think that the cultural fails around the Washington organization have been so poor, and I'm talking about the Dan Snyders. I'm not talking about what Ron Rivera is doing, but being able to hold accountability and force him to sell the team. But we've kind of been very vocal on this show about how many poor owners in the NFL will not ostracize Dan Snyder to be able to get him out of that position.
Right.
So,
right. I mean, Jim Irsay was probably the first one, right, that we finally heard actually call him out. But Jim Irsay is kind of an interesting person as well, right, to be calling, somebody else out. But that was really the first time that we heard an owner, if you want to say, turn, against Dan Snyder. But I will say this feels like maybe the first time in Washington where people actually feel like the Dan Snyder era might be coming to an end, and that the potential sale will seem like it's going through. They'll have yet to know, who the new owner will be, and honestly too, where this team will play. There's a lot of questions, surrounding Washington. If they'll stay in Maryland, lots of people think, go out to Virginia and play out there, to the dismay of many, because if you've been to Virginia, the traffic is horrible. But there's a lot of questions surrounding this Washington team. And oh, by the way, they also somehow have to also figure out how to win and be that competitive in a very good NFC East division.
Cottrell, you being a Browns fan, I know that you've watched your share of losing seasons. What do you think as far as, and I use that as a joke, but you guys are starting.
I got hurt a little bit.
Oh, listen, if you don't know, myself and Bill are Eagles fans. We're from Philadelphia. Cottrell lived in Philadelphia for a little while, well, outskirts of Philadelphia, and then he moved back to Cleveland. But Cottrell, you being the Browns fan that you are, the question that I would ask would be, who would be your starting quarterback next year on the Commanders? Cottrell, and then Kelsey, you just kind of fill in what you think is correct or no.
I mean, I think you got a few different options, different ways you want to go about it. Sam Howell obviously played somewhat well in his first start, but the last game of the season. And then you got so many QBs that are going to be hitting the market, where Derek Carr seems like it's all but inevitable that he's going to be on the open market. And then obviously we're going to get into what's going on with Lamar Jackson. But I mean, I think if I'm the Commanders, I bring in somebody to compete with Sam Howell, and you see who wins that job in camp. Even if it's a guy like Derek Carr or another veteran, I would bring in somebody and make him compete with Sam Howell, and then go from there. If Sam proves that he can be the guy, then obviously you want to get him started. You drafted him for a reason. But if he's not the guy, him sitting one more year, and you bring in a vet QB in that's not going to turn the ball over and not going to put your team in a position to necessarily lose a game, then I think you'd be okay. That Commanders defense is incredible, and you got weapons over there. Brian Robinson looked promising for a rookie running back. Terry McLaurin is obviously a receiver one. So you got plenty to work with in Washington. You just got to have a guy that's not turning the ball over.
Well, the question that I kind of would pose to you, Kelsey, is, do you think the current quarterback depth chart that Washington has, that any of the three will be the starting quarterback next year? Or do you feel like they go out and get somebody this offseason?
It's so interesting. If you talk to fans, I will say there's a lot of love for Sam Howell. I feel like someone is in my inbox every single day talking about the greatness of Sam Howell. But for me, I'm not too quick to go on that train yet. We've seen a very small sample size, folks. And so, I'm not one, I don't get, glitzy and glamorous over just, a good showing. I think that's what's been so cool about Brock Purdy, is that, not only did he have a great start to begin, we've kind of seen it consistently, right, go on. And so now, for instance, I'm able to buy more into him. Sam Howell, though, was a guy, and I remember back even to the preseason, actually, I know we're going to talk about the Ravens, but, got a lot of praise for his play against the Ravens, if you guys remember back to the NFL preseason when Washington played that Baltimore team. So I like Sam Howell. I think he is somebody that fans would like to see. Taylor Heineke is obviously, too, also just a fan favorite, just because the guy plays, I call him a blue-collar quarterback. He plays with his heart on his sleeve, and he gives you all that he has, right? And that's what Washington fans, really like. But I do think this season is going to be interesting because, as Cottrell mentioned, there's a lot of good veteran quarterbacks now, right, on the market. And as you think about, free agency and when quarterbacks could land, I think it's going to be interesting for this Washington team. I will also say a lot of people hit me up about Caleb Williams coming to Washington, obviously because of the hometown ties. But, the hometown ties are interesting in Washington. And, may he rest in peace. But the last hometown quarterback that we had in Washington was Dwayne Haskins. And unfortunately, obviously, that didn't go as planned in Washington, D.C. D.C. is a hard place to play. Now, you have Philly, and probably wearing the wrong color to be talking about Washington. I feel like I have Eagles green on, but Philadelphia, another hard place to play. So I think it's going to be hard playing in front of your hometown fans with a franchise that honestly has to turn things around. So to me, I also like bringing in a veteran quarterback. You want somebody that's mobile and can move in the pocket, but can also throw the football. To Cottrell's point, if you have Terry McLaurin as wide receiver 1, you better have someone that can throw the football down the football field, because Terry is going to find a way to catch the football. I say he plays grown man football. I mean, the man can really do anything. And honestly, I feel like he's an underrated, wide receiver. You talk about the running game that Washington has. Brian Robinson, what a story he's had, getting shot twice, coming back from that, going to the football field, and really being a core piece, right, of this Washington Commanders running back scheme. Antonio Gibson, obviously wanting him to get healthy and him to continue, to be part of that. And then even just wide receiver wise, I mean, there's so many I feel like Curtis Samuel, right, and just the turnaround that he's had, this season. Jahan Doxson.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to talk about people from Penn State, because I went to Maryland, but this might be the one time I give Penn State some love. He's been promising. I think one of the most fun rookies to watch this season. So you have to have the right quarterback here. But let's also remember, fellas, since the 2000 decade, this has been a team that's probably been through the most quarterbacks. We've been through this circle and circle and circle of going through quarterbacks. And we're just, it's kind of like you're playing, I forgot the name of the game where you spin and you're waiting to see where you land. And it seems like every time we land, we're having to spin again. And it gets tiring for folks. Like, I don't even know if I should buy a quarterback jersey in Washington, because I feel like next year it's going to be different. Like, I don't know what you do. So for saying all that to say, Derek Carr would be interesting. Jimmy G would be interesting. There's been a lot of fans that love Lamar Jackson, and what an easy move that would be. But, we have to see what happens in Baltimore. That's not looking good. Everyone hit me up this morning. Did you see he unfollowed the team? Did you see his Instagram? And, the young kids like to show their emotions, subliminally on social media. So saying all that to say, it's going to be interesting. But I do think if I'm Washington, I know I need to get a veteran guy, because I got to keep Terry McLaurin happy, right? We just gave him the bag. We just paid him. And now he wants to prove himself. You have a young budding team. Cottrell talked about this defense as well. This is a team that I think the NFC East should have had all 4 teams going to the playoffs this year. But unfortunately, that game happened. But again, you have a lot of pieces that will be returning. So now Washington has to capitalize. So it does have to be the right guys. And not just going to be who can you pay to come here and who wants to genuinely come to Washington. Tom Brady has been another guy that's been talked about in Washington. What will Tom Brady do next? Because me personally, I don't think he's going back to Tampa. If Tom Brady comes back, which I think he will, right? He wants to win a ring. He wants to go to a team that he feels like he can go to the playoffs with. He has unfinished business. So there's been a lot of names tossed around, but who can Ron Rivera work with? But again, I'm watching Ron Rivera because, again, he's a guy that said he liked Carson Wentz. He wanted Carson Wentz here. And if he's a guy of his word, I really want to see where that ends up and where that kind of turns to. But obviously, he got a lot of flack about it. And Ron Rivera just isn't in a good light right now, especially, when you're in a press conference and you're saying, hey, wait, that's what needs to happen for us to go on. And
personally, I hope the Commanders keep everything the same. I hope they start Sam Howell. I hope Ron Rivera's back, because that helps my Eagles. I'm an Eagles fan, and I would love to have a doormat.
To start?
Hey, listen, I know you're not truly a Commanders fan. So that's okay. You don't really hate us Eagles in Philadelphia. You just have to, because you're working in the DC media. But let's kind of move on to your team. And I've been very outspoken on this show about this, and Cottrell has been the opposite of me, and that's perfectly fine. But I truly believe Lamar Jackson could have played in that playoff game. And I know Michael Vick said that the other day, and I felt like he echoed exactly where my mind was. He had a PCL strain on his knee. Supposed to be a 3 to 4 week injury. He was out for 6 weeks. Everyone said he was going to be back for week 18. Everyone said we're just saving him to be safe for the playoffs. I believe that he listened to the Richard Sherman podcast early in the season, and which Richard Sherman said, any injury you have, just take the rest of the year off. Take the year off. As soon as the season's over, he unfollows the social media accounts of the Baltimore Ravens. I'm sure you had all those notifications this morning, but I felt like Lamar could have played in that game. And I know he put a post out saying that he felt no stability in his knee. Right. Being a Ravens fan and watching that game versus Cincinnati, and Cottrell, that being in your division, you being a Browns fan, how did you view that? Did you view that Lamar was just being very super cautious, or do you think he's written off being a Baltimore Raven?
Ooh, Cottrell, do you want me to start this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's interesting. This is a guy, that the Baltimore Ravens, everyone remembers when Lamar was drafted and Ozzie Newsome moved up to get Lamar Jackson, right, as the last player in the first round of that draft. And then everybody that's watched the Baltimore Ravens know this team has really, especially the offense, has been built around Lamar. He's a guy that loves Baltimore, and I mean loves Baltimore. I mean, I'll tell you when a quarterback is real. Lamar Jackson has been to the Patapsco flea market. And for folks that don't know Baltimore, when you go to the Patapsco flea market, I'm telling you, that means you're a real one, because not everybody goes there. That's really when you can be a man of the people, visiting schools, visiting the kids there. So I think all in all, he truly does embrace this organization. Has seemed, at least until recently, to have a good relationship with Coach Harbaugh. There's been times on this football field when Lamar has wanted to go for it, and Raven fans are going, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Like, no, do not go for it. And, John Harbaugh looks to the sideline. Lamar Jackson looks to the sideline and looks at Coach Harbaugh, and they go for it. Why? Because he has that trust in his quarterback. So all that to say, obviously, we haven't really seen a fractured relationship until the season, till the beginning of the season, right, when the contract negotiations were going on. And it seemed to be somewhat moving. Lamar Jackson is that interesting guy because he is his own representation. Obviously everyone knows he has no agent, but his mom does a lot with him as well in business assistance, which I actually do love. Mama always should be there helping to guide you. But, all that to say, the season goes on, and Baltimore has been successful largely because of Lamar in this offense. And this is a Ravens offense that struggled. Anytime you have a wide receiver going weeks without scoring touchdowns, like that's a problem, right? But Lamar has obviously been able to make something happen out of nothing. That's why we call him must-watch football. We call him Houdini on the football field. But all in all, to say, I think the Ravens are in this interesting position, right? Where you look at Lamar, he's won a playoff game, right, in his seasons here. We know Baltimore is always a team that you're usually going to be putting in the postseason. Lamar is a large reason why, but now it's all going to that cost, right? And that cost for the Baltimore Ravens. And Deshaun Watson's contract, I think, messed up a lot of that because of all the guaranteed money that he got. Even for Cleveland, I really want to see how that really pans out for Cleveland. I know this season obviously was interesting for Deshaun coming back, obviously, to the football field after weeks off because of everything that happened off the football field. But, I do think right now there is a fractured relationship because it seems like, to your point, I think Lamar does not want to go back on the football field until he gets the money he's guaranteed. And, you talked about Michael Vick, but the other side of it was RG3. And I remember being here in DC in 2012 when RG3 hurt his knee, and when everybody, he was electric. Everybody in DC had RG3 jerseys. I don't know if we've ever seen anybody that popular in DC, but I also remember how that changed his career. And obviously RG3 was not the same quarterback after that. I remember when he was a backup playing in Baltimore with the Ravens, and I remember he had to start a game for Baltimore, and quite frankly, guys, he was horrible that game. He had to start for the Baltimore Ravens, and thank gosh he's great in the booth now. But the injury obviously really hurt RG3, and RG3 is a guy that's close to Lamar. He played behind Lamar, so I don't think Lamar. I do think Lamar was injured, as you said. A PCL knee strain is supposed to be a couple of weeks out, but to be fair, J.K. Dobbins, to use him as an example, was a guy running back for Baltimore Ravens who was out with a knee injury. He was sent back to play, and he actually had to go back and tell the team, hey, something's not right with my knee. And he went back and had another surgery, right? And then came back to the Baltimore Ravens. And thank gosh he did, because since he came back from that surgery, J.K. Dobbins has been playing lights out football. He's a running back that everybody likes. So I give that as an example. He was a guy that was injured, came back to play, but he wasn't fully healthy. Then he went back to get another surgery and then came back and was fully healthy. Lamar, let's remember, he's a dynamic quarterback. He gets it done with his arms and in his leg. And so if he's playing and Lamar is not afraid to get hit, you do want his knee to be 100%. So I'm not going to say, that he wasn't fully injured. Could he have played, or to Michael Vick's point, slapped the knee brace on? Sure, but also this is Lamar's career. This is the trajectory of his career. He's trying to be a quarterback that plays a long time, despite what others think, because many thinking he can't play a long time because of the style of football, that he plays. So I think it was a joint decision. I think the money probably was in his head. But Lamar loves the guys. The guys love him. I've seen how the players rally around Lamar and how they defend him. So nothing can tell me, that Lamar Jackson, if he could have been on that football field, that he wouldn't have been. He's also close to Tyler Huntley. They're close friends, right, coming from the same area in Florida. So also rooting for his success. But I think now the Ravens are at a point where Lamar's kind of like, hey, y'all didn't have me, and look what happened. Look what happened. That Cincinnati game, a perfect example. Had Lamar played, I do feel like that the Baltimore Ravens could have won that game. Sorry, Bengals fans. I know they're super excited about it, but that was a game the Ravens really gave away. Tyler Huntley had a pick, and then he decided to try to be Superman, hopping over the goal. Hopping over the goal, and Sam Hubbard looks like the best thing to hit footballs forever. So I think it's crazy.
He legit gave that game away with that fumble by Sam Hubbard. I think that the point I kind of wanted to get at is I just really don't like the fact that it's being portrayed in the media that the Ravens won't pay him. They offered him a contract before the season started that was almost $50 million a year with $166 million guaranteed. I've always said this, and I'll say it again. One team's mistake should not be everyone else's punishment. The Arizona Cardinals, the Denver Broncos obviously made mistakes on their quarterback. Paying Kyler Murray that type of money, paying Russell Wilson that type of money. The Baltimore Ravens don't want to make that mistake at quarterback, paying someone $50 million guaranteed money. It's just not smart. They offered him money. They offered him an exit strategy out. If he's playing at that level and the trajectory of the quarterback position, especially its pay, continues to go up, then you're not going to have a problem keeping him for that contract.
But Gene, you're missing a big part of it though. You can't compare Lamar to Russell Wilson and Kyler because one, Kyler and Russell Wilson, they don't have an MVP award. Kyler and Russell Wilson, they don't have 70+ win percentage in the games that they play. I think Lamar is 41-16, something crazy.
That's crazy, yeah.
In the games that he started. So it's not, you can't necessarily compare those two. Russ is also on the decline of his career. And obviously people didn't think that he would fall off the way that he did this year, but we knew that he was slowing down. Lamar is starting to get into the prime of his career. Like if you want to say he's peaked already because he's won an MVP award, I'd hear you. But at the same time, though, you have to realize that Lamar is going to be a special talent. And I feel like if the Ravens really wanted to keep him for a long period of time, I think this would have been handled a lot differently. I think, of course, even if you don't want to pay him right now and you haven't agreed on the right number just yet, I completely understand that. Lamar decided that he was going to go out there. There wouldn't be any negotiations during the season. But when Lamar has this injury, I feel like if the Ravens were really behind Lamar, it would be a situation of he's not ready to go yet. And, we trust Lamar. And once he's ready, we're going to make sure that the timing is right. This is our guy. We don't want to rush him out there too quickly because we think he's going to be a cornerstone of our team. And we don't want to risk any potential serious injury. But that wasn't the case. Jim Harbaugh was very deflective when he was at press conferences. It was a lot of I don't knows and, only Lamar truly knows what's going on and things like that. And that didn't sound like a guy who was behind their franchise quarterback to me. So that's part of the issue that I have with the whole thing as well.
To be fair, to be fair, to respond to that, though, John Harbaugh is in that locker room. John Harbaugh is speaking to those trainers. And if the trainers are telling John Harbaugh that Lamar could play, if he put on a knee brace or Lamar could play, he's fine. I think the biggest issue I had with it was the amount of people that said he wasn't they didn't want to pay him. Would you give him 6 years, $50 million? Are you giving him $250 million over 5? Guaranteed control? That's my question. So I'm not saying
you give him,
doesn't mean that you have to pay them.
I'm not saying you necessarily give him $250 million all guaranteed like a Deshaun Watson-esque kind of deal, but to say that he doesn't deserve more than Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson guaranteed money. And even if you think those contracts are a mistake, that's the market now. And that's just the way the sports world works. So when people reset the market, you see those numbers go up. And so I mean, the best way to put it is, yesterday's price isn't today's price. So if the Ravens were on top of it and they would have got it done, before the season started, and how Arizona was on top of it, they were like, hey, we don't want to wait until Baltimore pays Jackson and since he plays Burrow, we're going to get on top of it before we even get to that point. And at this point, if Kyler is even just a bit of a superstar that he has the potential to be, they got to steal because all these other quarterbacks are going to be getting $200+ million guaranteed deal. Exactly.
And I think to that point, I think it's not the question of should Lamar get paid. I think everyone says yes, but it's what team will pay Lamar that. Because let's remember, this is a Ravens organization that decided to pay Joe Flacco a lot of money after that Super Bowl win. And then what happened once they played Joe Flacco, things got different because they couldn't keep other pieces, that they need. So I think the Ravens organization doesn't want to go through that again. And I think you're right. I think the Ravens are trying to find a way to keep Lamar happy, but they're also not trying to give him all the guaranteed money that he wants. But as Cottrell said, that's just what the market is now. And Lamar, no agent or not, The man knows his worth and he knows what it is to bet on himself. He's been doing that his entire life. So I think Baltimore, it's going to be interesting. I just don't know. Somebody asked me today, like, do I get the number 8 jersey for Lamar? I said, I would get it if I were you now, because you just don't know the future. And there's been conversation. I've talked with some folks who cover Baltimore too. And they said, hey, would Derek Carr be interesting here? He's a guy that's also mobile and can run the football and throw the ball down. But I think the question is, who for Baltimore will get them a Super Bowl? And that's been the question, about Lamar Jackson. We know he's dynamic. We know he's great. But can he get this team to a Super Bowl, right? If you have Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs aren't worried. The other guy Lamar is compared to Josh Allen, another guy, but look where Josh Allen's team is right now. Justin Herbert is another guy Lamar's been compared to. I think, me personally, I have Lamar over that, though I think Herbert is a great quarterback. But all that to say, I think that's why the Ravens are kind of in a standstill. And this is why everyone's looking at general manager Eric DeCosta and saying, just what are we going to do? And I really think, again, I think Eric DeCosta doesn't know what he's going to do. The Ravens owner, Steve Biscotti, has come out and said, we love Lamar. We do want to keep him in Baltimore. But Steve, what price are you willing to pay to keep him in Baltimore and in Owens Mills, Maryland? And I think that's why Lamar right now, he can sit back with the shades and just say, hey, either you're going to pay me or, again, someone else will. Who wouldn't want Lamar Jackson at the helm? This is also a league where we are looking for quarterbacks. A lot of teams need some solid quarterbacks. And so if Lamar were to hit the market, let's just be honest, he probably would get what he wants, because
The
again,
Jets would
teams feel like they
100%.
could use him.
The Jets would 100% overpay him. We've done this on the show prior, and I kind of want to get your take on it because I just heard your Justin Herbert comment. I know, we got a couple minutes left here. So I think that this will be really interesting, right? So we rated the quarterbacks that we would take for the next 10 years, next 5 years. There's so many young quarterbacks in the NFL.
Ooh,
And like
I'm interested to hear this list.
on my list, I have Mahomes 1, Burrow 2, which I get a lot of flack for because people have Josh Allen ahead. But I'm starting to get less and less. I've been doing this all year. I've been telling people, give me Joe Burrow over all of them. But Lamar Jackson falls in that 7-8 range for a lot of people when they're looking at these young quarterbacks. So I'll give you mine. You tell me where you disagree, where you don't. But if I was starting a franchise today, I go Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow,
for sure,
Josh Allen, and then after that it gets really, really twisty, right? So you have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, all those guys in that area. And this is just after I had Justin Herbert ahead of Trevor Lawrence. I had him just slightly ahead.
Yeah.
I've seen the progression Trevor Lawrence has made this year. And over the next 10 years of football, give me Trevor Lawrence. So I have Lawrence 4, Herbert 5, Hurts 6, and Jackson 7.
Wow.
So
I think it's interesting.
Being someone
for me, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying being someone that is a Ravens fan that have seen Lamar play day in and day out. Like I watch every game just like you do. I have all 22 NFL. Like I'm nuts. Like I break down the film just like
we
anybody
all
else
are,
does.
as you should.
Where would you have Lamar in that list?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think the thing about Lamar, that the biggest thing as of late has been keeping him healthy. And I think that's kind of where it makes it a little bit murky about where you put Lamar Jackson. Because, in my mind, when you were saying the list, I would like to put him, at that 4 spot. I think Trevor Lawrence, for instance, he's somebody that's jumped up in my list because of his play this season, right? It's been great to see. And I watched that Jaguars-Ravens game, where the Jaguars were able to come back and actually beat Baltimore. So I became a more Trevor Lawrence believer. Justin Herbert is still one, though. He's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong, folks. He's a good quarterback. But I still feel like he has more hype. And I personally would put Lamar over him. Jalen Hurts, obviously another guy that had a lot of good play this season, but I also think I put Lamar Jackson over Jalen Hurts. I think Lamar Jackson just changes your football team. Again, Lamar has changed football, and I'd say for the better. Even the NFL knows this. This is how Ravens get good game times. Because Lamar Jackson, you just truly don't know what he's going to do. And I say that to say not just because he's got fun to watch, but because he is dynamic. People have talked about his arm strength and him throwing. I think obviously he's shown that he can improve that. A large reason I think folks remember the Ravens signed Deshaun Jackson, even though he didn't play as much as I would have liked him. It was really frustrating to me to see him signed and then not really used Djax. But they signed him because the whole point and goal was hopefully, and he had actually said in a podcast before that he wanted to play with who? Lamar Jackson. They said if you could come back to the league, and he picked Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, the reason why they got him is because they wanted to spread the football field, spread the ball. Why? Because, Lamar, his favorite receiver or favorite tight end is Mark Andrews. That's his favorite target, but you got to have more when teams know you want to go to Mark Andrews all the time. So, I think they had a goal and a plan for him, but it was just obviously trying to expand that out. But I say all that to say, I think I'd have Lamar no lower than 5. To me, having Lamar lower than 5 is just disrespectful to the man and his talent. And that's just, again, as someone who's covered him, seen him play. But again, I get the injury risks that have happened as of late. So I could see why people would drop him. But the thing about Lamar, you just don't know what he's going to do. And he can win a football game for you if he needs to. And he's put the Ravens on his back. And I think he can do that for any team, especially if he's behind a good offensive line in football, which we all know is super important in football. And let's remember, too, the Ravens have had some injuries there. So, yeah, for me, I'm sorry, but I can't put him lower than number 5 in the list.
So who did you have for? Did you have Lawrence or Herbert for?
Yeah, Katra, I don't want to cut you off. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I'm with you for the most part. I mean, I think the other thing, too, is that I think the Ravens have tried to put weapons around him. Like, obviously, J.K. Dobbins, he was injured last year, and they tried to get him Bateman, a first-round receiver. They had Hollywood. But you notice with a lot of these other teams, they have legit number 1 receivers. Like, Patrick Mahomes had Tyreek Hill. Now he still has Travis Kelsey. Burrow has his trio there, spearheaded by Chase. You got Herbert with Allen and Williams. Like, if you get Lamar Jackson, some of these guys, and I say it on the show all the time, if you get Lamar Jackson those weapons, he would look like a completely different quarterback. Like, I get it that they're trying to get him weapons. I get that you're trying to get him weapons, but they're not the same caliber. When Josh Allen was struggling, the Bills didn't just give up on him or say he was going to be a bust or overrated, things like that. They went out and got him Stephon Diggs, and he looked like an MVP caliber quarterback. So
turns out,
exactly.
So I think that's a point people need to talk about, Control. Right. I mean, he has DeMarcus Robinson. I'm not going to say DeMarcus Robinson is trash. He's a solid wide receiver, but what has he been really able to do? Sammy Watkins comes back, but also, again, a guy that just hasn't. That's why literally, like, thank gosh Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews, because he's been a large reason why, when not running the football, luckily they have a good run game, but he's been a large reason why this offense has moved under Lamar Jackson. Because if you've noticed, Mark Andrews got a little bit frustrated when Lamar was out, because Tyler Huntley wasn't able to target him, like a Lamar Jackson was. I think you're right. I think that's the other thing people have to look at. But that's, again, goes back to the problem with paying Lamar. If you pay Lamar, what high quality wide receivers, right, can you get in for Lamar? So I think therein lies the question. So yeah, I think that's just the biggest thing. And then to go to your question, I think at number 4, I think I'd put Herbert at 4.
So you
no. I put actually this season, because of what I see, and it's actually, this is probably the first time I'm going to say this on the show, but because of what I see, I've actually liked Trevor Lawrence's trajectory. I mean, he had that game where he came in through the picks, of course. I know that, folks, but just when he plays well, he can play well. So I think if it's based on this season, maybe I would have Trevor Lawrence at 4.
If you're a GM, I think the main question is, if you're the GM and you could draft from a pool of quarterbacks, like, that's kind of how we use it, right? For the next 10 years, you're going to sign this guy
the future,
to a 10-year contract. So I just can't see, like, you guys both mentioned Josh Allen, right? But I'm looking here. Josh Allen hasn't missed a start in his career. Lamar Jackson's now missed 11 in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think that matters because Josh Allen's built like a brick. He's like a linebacker. He runs people over.
He's huge.
You never see those type of injuries with him. Whereas Lamar now, this is his second December and January in a row he hasn't played.
But I think a big part of it too, though, was that last year, all of his, for the most part, all of his weapons got hurt. Like, Lamar didn't get hurt until he was quite literally out there playing by himself, trying to be Superman every single game.
Right, Mark Andrews isn't by yourself, but I got you.
No, last year he had everyone was injured.
The defense was hurt. The offense was bad.
They had injuries all across the board last year, and I think last year was just Lamar was trying to do too much, and that's ultimately how he got hurt. There was just too much weight on him. I think this year it was just one of those things where he's a agile person. He uses his legs a lot, and he twisted up his knee. But I think I think Lamar would look like a different quarterback if he had a true number 1 receiver. And, maybe we'll see less of these kind of injuries because that big number 1 receiver will go out there making plays instead of Lamar extending the plays and, things like that. I think it'll be less pressure on Lamar's shoulders if you go get him a true number 1 guy.
Does Baltimore have
a new offensive coordinator? Sorry, I had to say that too.
100%.
Greg Roman ain't it. Greg Roman ain't it.
But does Baltimore have the money to go out there, re-sign Lamar for the money he wants,
That's
and
the
bring
problem.
in
I
and
mean,
bring in new.
they just show that they want to spend money. They gave Roquan Smith $100 million, and
$100 million.
They
Top
had
5 linebacker in football.
They had Queen already there, and I mean, obviously Roquan is a special talent, but if you spend $100 million on a linebacker
here with this team, help this team build up, and a new guy comes in. Not that he's not happy for him, but again, you can't think that also hasn't like influenced Lamar kind of being like, well, what the hell, like I've been here, I've been trying to get this done with y'all. And I can think that's probably why, too, we're seeing some of the stuff we're seeing from Lamar Jackson right now. But as you said, that's why Baltimore has a big thing to solve, and they better solve it quickly, because I think the only thing that can happen is that Lamar just gets more disgruntled and, maybe makes a further rift with this Ravens team, who I think, the Ravens' identity has been largely based off of number 8, Lamar Jackson. So if they want it to continue again, they're just going to have to find somehow, some way, some means to make him happy. But he's not going to take less, folks. Again, he's not going to take less because he knows what he deserves to get paid.
Well, Kelsey, I really appreciate you joining in on the show. If you don't mind.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell our fans.
I did have a quick question.
Yep. Sorry.
Before you head out, did you see John Wall's latest interview with?
Yeah, so later today I'll be going on air to talk basketball. So it's been a crazy day. So yeah, John Wall and some of his comments on how the crazy trade happened with the Wizards, and obviously didn't go down well. I'll say that. And then just how the fans do love John, and I think he was right on that. But I think a lot of questions maybe towards your way about how he said they could have beat the Cavs back in 2017 with the team that they had. So John Wall's I think his interview was very telling and very interesting. But honestly, that's DC. We always have craziness happen. It comes out later and it gives us something to talk about. So folks like John Wall and Washington Commanders, Control, they keep me busy and in business because of everything that happens.
And it seems like, at least with the way the players talk about it, it just seems like DC as a whole, like they don't run, their front office just doesn't run it the way that they try to portray it in the media.
Yeah, folks. I mean, DC, I know it's the nation's capital, but a lot happens. It's a messy town. They get things done, but again, there's just a lot that happens. And I think John Wall shed light on that. And to me, it was honestly very telling, because John Wall he's a quiet guy. If you've been around John Wall, he's a talker, he gets to know you, but John Wall is not known for being, extrovertly loud or, anything like that. So I thought for us to hear him talk that much, I felt like something he had been holding in his chest, and that finally he had a chance to release it. And that's why everybody's talking about that interview.
So tell the listeners where they can follow you, support you. You've been awesome. And then before you go, I'm going to at least ask you this question, being someone that's a Ravens fan. Would you pay Lamar Jackson? I'm going to ask same thing that Control didn't want to answer. Would you pay $50 million over 5, which is $250 million?
It's a hard question.
I agree.
It's a hard question, but I think for me, it's going to hurt my Ravens fans, but I just don't know if you can pay Lamar that, especially just looking at Baltimore's needs. But I love Lamar in Baltimore, so I hate that. But I just don't know if it's possible, folks. It's what is the saying? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, I feel like Baltimore's trying to do that, but it's just not possible. And Baltimore has the needs that they need to fill. Because let's just remember, Baltimore is a team that a lot of folks have picked to win the Super Bowl this year at the beginning of the season, because they thought this team could stay healthy and they thought Lamar was going to be there for the entirety of the season. But obviously, things have just changed. I think also really quick, Baltimore made a mistake on firing Wink Martindale. I'm so happy for Wink Martindale and the New York Giants. I was not happy when Baltimore got rid of him. The defense and him, I thought obviously when he got fired, there wasn't the best season for the defense, but it wasn't enough for him to get fired. So just also have to say
completely agree with you.
Martindale.
Completely agree with you. Look what he's doing with the Giants. It's wonders. But how do we follow and support you? I know how to follow and support you, but tell the people listening.
I so appreciate it. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in. Thank you all for having me. Had a blast here. Love football. I'm on social media, The Real K Nelson on Twitter and Instagram, Kelsey Nicole Nelson on Facebook. Check out my website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com as well to get in touch with me. And also check out my podcast, Listen with K&N on Fox Sports Radio. I so appreciate you, fellows. This was fun.
You're awesome. Appreciate you joining us. You're always welcome here.
Yes, we
thank you so much.
Appreciate it for sure.
Hopefully,
have a great one, fellas.
Take care.
Bye.
We got to get Shally back in on there. I feel terrible. Like the guy's been trying to log in waiting to log in. I don't know what to do for him. I got to switch over to Wire Sports Podcast Team. Change the name. Control, if you don't mind sending him like a login or an invite from the top. I don't know, but we've got to get Shally back in here. I'm missing some Shally. Whatever we got to do. But the show must go on until he can get in. I gave him all my logins. I don't know what to do at this point. But we got to talk about what happened this past weekend. So we have the Jaguars, who, by the way, 6 for 6. I didn't think I was going 6 for 6. Saturday night, I didn't think I was going 6 for 6. Saturday night, when the Jaguars were down 27-0, and Trevor Lawrence looked like he was in high school, like he looked like versus Alabama the second time. I don't know. I've never seen him look that bad. That first half of that game, but football's played in 2 halves. And Control, you said something in our chat, and I would love for you to reiterate that. What did you say about Trevor Lawrence and a group of quarterbacks that can come back from 27-0 down?
I don't remember what the exact words were, but I said that I wouldn't excuse what happened in the first half for him. But if you can overcome that and come back from being down 27, you're in a special group of quarterbacks. Only the elite and the superstars can do that kind of damage in that amount of time. And for him to do that, and it wasn't like this Chargers defense was horrible or anything like that. Like, Chargers have guys that can make plays, and he didn't flinch, for lack of a better term. Like, he obviously struggled, but getting that touchdown right before the half ended, they came out, got a quick strike, and was only down 2 scores. He was poised and he was ready to go fight. I feel like a lot of times in that situation, especially younger guys, they would get discouraged and somewhat quit on themselves, and just instead of throwing the riskier passes, you get a lot more checkdowns and things that are safe. But Trevor Lawrence played the game like he normally played the game. He was going through his progressions, making the right throws, and he led a great comeback.
I think that the comeback says everything about him. I watched that football game, and in my head, we all say this, right? And it's all bullshit. And I know that I never thought that game was over, especially when they scored the touchdown with 42 seconds left in the first half, and it was 27-7. I'm like, this game's not over. It's only 3 possessions. And then they go out and score the touchdown early in the third quarter, and it's 27-14. So I just felt like the bigger issue that they were going to run into was stopping that Chargers offense.
Yep.
And they did. And I credit the one and only Brandon Staley for that, because you have Austin Eckler and you didn't run the football. What the hell were you doing? I can't understand it. And Bill, if you're listening, I keep continuously hear you clicking in and clicking out, but you're not. Your camera is not connected to the show for us to add you. I promise we want to get you back in here as soon as we can.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing was stopping that Chargers offense. And I'll say I was expecting the Chargers to be a little bit slower because Mike Williams wasn't out there, but for the most part, they were continuously moving the ball down the field, essentially with no problem. I think a lot of it were the Chargers were benefiting from having the ball in a advantageous field position because of the Lawrence interceptions. But, I really feel like Bill's back.
He's back.
Bill,
I've been freaking out trying to get you in back in here for like 20 minutes. I'm not kidding. I feel like I've almost given bad audio. So I want to apologize to everybody, but I've been going nuts, going on websites, emailing links. So I apologize. But I wanted my man Scholastic here.
It's I've learned more about my computer in the last 10 minutes I think I have my entire life.
Well, you're in the perfect time. Good, Control. Finish the comment. You were talking about Trevor Lawrence and the advantageous field position that the Chargers were receiving based off those turnovers.
Yeah, so basically, there wasn't – I'm not going to say there wasn't a point, but for a lot of those, the Chargers weren't going down 80 yards each possession, getting touchdowns, scoring points. A lot of it was them benefiting from the field position. And, after they got that good field position, then they were moving the ball, 40 yards, 50 yards, things like that. But they didn't really have to drive the field, too much in that first half. And I really think that, Herbert, and I don't want to put the blame all on Herbert or anything like that, because I think Staley is a huge part of, what happened. But we saw a couple times Herbert missed some easy ones. He had Keenan Allen in the end zone wide open, and instead of 7 points, that's 3 points. That's a 4-point swing, and the difference, a big difference in the game. And I mean, I got to give the Jags all the credit in the world. Dougie P didn't flinch, Trevor Lawrence didn't flinch, and they were ready to go.
Before I move to Bill, because I know Bill's got a lot to get off his chest. My question for you would be, and I said this before the game, and I'll say it again. Better offensive line, better receiving core, better defense, better running back, better everything on the Chargers. The only thing that was better for Jacksonville was the head coach. Would you now take Trevor Lawrence for the next 10 years over Justin Herbert?
No, I'm still with Herbert. I think a lot of it too is, you say better O-line, which is normally the case. It's not act like they weren't missing Rashawn Slater, their best offensive lineman. And, you also say better receiving core. Let's not act like they weren't missing Mike Williams in that game.
Keenan Allen's still better than anything Jacksonville has.
I get it, but as a whole, though, I'd rather have, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Ingram with the way that they were playing.
Nobody said that before this season.
With the Chargers receiving core, if Mike Williams isn't there, I would definitely.
Harold Everett had a great year. Keenan Allen's an elite wide receiver. Keenan Allen's
an elite wide receiver
before this year.
Who had him
Zay
in their
Jones
top tight
was
ends?
a bust
Who had him in the
this
top
year?
Christian
Kirk was a slot before
and he got
this
paid,
year.
and he got paid $80 million. Like, let's not act. All of these guys had career years. It's a perfect situation. I get it. They got a better quarterback and all that stuff. But Evan Ingram, I saw this coming. Christian Kirk, I didn't think that he'd be this good, but he wasn't a bad receiver in Arizona. He was just the number three option over there.
Bill, Charlie's wrong.
No. I'm not going to tell him he's wrong per se. I mean, if you look at the Chargers line this year, bottom 5 in both in run win rate and pass win rate. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen played 4 games together this year. That's it. I'm not going to sit here and say Justin Herbert played great in the second half, because he didn't. But I mean, I think some of that stuff's misleading. As I agree with Cottrell in part. I think as a whole, I think what Jacksonville had on the field this weekend was better than the Chargers. I think if Mike Williams is healthy, then I think it's a different conversation. And I think Ingram and Kirk kind of to some degree fall, they're under the same tree. Ingram's physical talent was never the question. Could never stay on the field. And, he was, subdued to some degree with bad quarterback play and really terrible coaching for the first couple of years of his career. I don't think Evan Ingram is, Kelsey by any means, but I think he's a lot better than what he showed in New York if he can stay healthy. Physically, he's a talented kid. Kirk's the same way. Kirk battled injuries, and like you guys both said, with D-Hop and Fitzgerald there for a while, he just wasn't getting targets. Is he a top 10 receiver? No. I'm not saying anything like that, but I think the biggest thing, I'm shocked that Staley kept his job. I don't know what happened in those meetings. I don't know what else they needed to see, especially with Sean Payton dangling out there. That's a match made in heaven if Justin Herbert's going to be your guy for the next 10 years, which I'm assuming he's going to be. How you're not taking a run at Sean Payton to pair him, with the success and the track record he has is crazy. Staley just proven time and again, he's just not the guy. You can put whatever you want around him. If he's still going to have input on play calling and things like that, you're going to get the same offense next year. It's not going to look a lot different.
I'll tell you, Chiefs fans are got to be super excited. Listen, I'm going to argue with both of you guys. I think that there's no way you can say that Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones Jr., and Evan Ingram are a better receiving core, even without Mike Williams. You have Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, Austin Eckler in that backfield, who's catching the ball 100 times out of the backfield. I think that if you watch that game with your two eyes, and I know you guys did because you're huge football fans, every time Trevor Lawrence dropped back, he had pressure in his face. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa were in his face all friggin' night. Justin Herbert had a clean pocket to throw out of the entire game. So you want to argue offensive line was better in Jacksonville? It wasn't. It wasn't. You had Bosa and Mack in his face all night. Second part, and most important, before this season, before a season with Trevor Lawrence, who's the better of the two quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence is better than Justin Herbert. He's won a playoff game before Justin Herbert with a worse team around him. Before this season, if I asked you that same question, and I said Gerald Everett, Keenan Allen, and DeAndre Carter, or Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Ingram, you would have laughed at me.
I would not
laughed at me.
You keep forgetting, I had Evan Ingram in my list for top 10 tight ends of this year. So I would not have laughed at you. And you throw Gerald Everett out there. I've never had him in my top 10. I've never had him in my top 15 of tight ends in the league.
Gerald Everett's never been in anybody's discussion.
And you got to, when you're throwing out the third weapon that you have is a running back, you can't name the number 2 or number 3 receiver. That shows you exactly what he's working with. His backup left tackle, Rashawn Slater, obviously didn't play. Backup left tackle got hurt, and they were working with the third string left tackle in there. And, I would say that Chargers team, they should have won the game. And you're making it seem like I got to defend the Chargers here, and that's not the case. They shouldn't be absolved from what happened in the game. But ultimately, what it came down to was that, and not what it came down to, but if we're looking at the picture as a whole, the Chargers had a lot of people in there that were not their actual starters, and the Jaguars had their full starting lineup for pretty much the entire season that played.
You mean almost the exact same team that last year that won 2 games?
Correct.
Well, I mean,
the exact same team though that won the AFC South that didn't have Zay Jones last year, or Christian Kirk last year, or Evan Ingram last year, or Travis Etienne last year, or Doug Peterson last year. So that team, that's the one I'm talking about. Or Trevon Walker, and all the pieces that they had.
And I mean, I think the other thing is too, like, I don't think nobody's is, to Cottrell's point, nobody's absolving or, not putting blame on the Chargers. Like, I feel like this whole argument's getting a little skewed. I'm just simply pointing out the simple facts of who played, what happened, and what didn't. I think if I ask you before the season, Everett or Ingram, like, you might have took Everett, but again, it's a discussion. Like, you make it sound like Everett Ingram was the 25th ranked tight end and Gerald Everett was like the 7th. Nobody's making that argument, and nobody's saying that Herbert played great. But I mean, at some point, like, it's again, and I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago. All the injuries and everything that happened with this team this year was probably going to bail Brandon Staley out, and it's exactly what happened. It's just it's hard to, you could say play through injuries and play with who you got and this and that, and to some point, I always agree with you on that. But when you're factoring in everything that they had,
But they got almost everyone back. They were only missing Rashawn Slater and J.C. Jackson and Mike Williams too.
And Mike Williams,
yeah. But that's all they were missing come playoff time.
That's all they were missing.
And they don't have a freaking playoff win.
That's all they were missing. And that's three Pro Bowl caliber players.
If they're healthy,
yeah, dude. You're talking about J.C. Jackson, who's debatably, he's not debatably, he's a top 5 corner. You're talking about Mike Williams, who's a top 15, top 16 wide receiver, and Slater, who's one of the best left tackles in the game. Don't make it sound like they're throw-ins, dude. Like, that's what I mean. Like, you're talking about all pro players.
They have the most talented roster in football when healthy.
No, they don't.
They do.
We had this argument last year, dude. Like, when you keep wanting to do the Burrow Herbert thing, and you can't admit when you go skill position for skill position, Joe Burrow's got a better team, and it's not close. And you always want to say, oh, he's got Keenan Allen. Okay, Jamar Chase is way better. Mike Williams, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, they're all really close. Joe Mixon as a running back, as an actual running back, is light years above Austin Eckler. Does Austin Eckler have a skill set that Joe Mixon doesn't by catching the ball out of the backfield? Absolutely. That's the offense the Chargers run. But, like, it's close, dude. And then you talk about the offensive line all the time. Cincinnati's terrible. The Chargers are right next to them. They're bottom 5 in win rate for both pass and rush, and that was with Slater at the beginning of the year. Like, they're not good. They're not good at all.
The Chargers have the most talented roster in football. You have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, J.C. Jackson. You have Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. I can go over all pro after all pro after all pro. Asante Samuel Jr. played
other than Mack, they all missed time this year. Mike Williams and
fully understand that. I said when healthy, they have the most talented roster in football.
And they weren't healthy this weekend.
I understand that, but that's 3 games, 3 all-pro guys that they were missing for this game. And all 3 of those guys would probably be the most valuable player on Jacksonville's entire franchise outside of the quarterback position. It's the truth. You can say what you want to say. Would J.C. Jackson go in and be their best defensive player? The answer is yes. Would Rashawn Slater go in there and be the best offensive lineman on Jacksonville? Absolutely. The answer is yes. Would Mike Williams go in there and be their number 1? The answer is yes. So, yes, I understand what you're saying. They were missing 3 all-pro players, but they have 12 of them. Like, they have Derwin James, Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert, Rashawn Slater.
I think the thing is that we understand who's on the roster, but all those guys didn't suit up and play the game this past weekend. And that, again, we're not saying that the Chargers shouldn't have won that game. We're not saying that we didn't expect the Chargers to win that game. Simply what we're saying is that game was the game was closer than I would say I expected it to be, even with those guys missing. I still thought they would go out and win that game, and I thought they would go to Jacksonville and take care of business. I'm simply saying that I don't want to discredit the guys that Jacksonville has in comparison to what the Chargers put out on the field, at least offensively. I understand JC.
Jacksonville is next year with Calvin Ridley.
Oh yeah, of course they're going to be better. But the other thing too is that Keenan Allen is still a really good receiver, and I'm not going to slight him at all. But he's not the Keenan Allen that was a consistent Pro Bowler or the All-Pro caliber talent.
Number 1 over in Jacksonville, and it would
absolutely he would. But if we ranked our top 15 receivers, I don't think Keenan Allen would be on any of our lists. That's all I'm saying. Like, the name Keenan Allen is nice, but he's not the same Keenan Allen that he was 3-4 years ago, where he was All-Pro caliber talent.
Okay.
At the end of the day, the Chargers choked. I mean, I don't think anybody's nobody's not saying they didn't. Nobody's saying that certain people played well. I mean, it's just there's no excuse for it. And again, I mean, I think even more so Cottrell, like I don't want Staley there anymore. And I really thought, I was shocked this wasn't the final nail in the coffin to go up 27-0 in a playoff game and lose and still come back and keep your job.
That's laughable, right? That's laughable.
It's bad. It's really bad. It's really bad.
And listen, and I think Godfrey said it earlier in the chat, and I'll pull it up. He said that the Spanos have always been cheap. But when you're in that stadium, with that franchise quarterback that everyone agrees is a top 10 guy that you want to start your franchise with, right? Most people have him top 5, some even 4. Some are idiots and have him 3 or 2. But I think when you have that in front of you, and Sean Payton wants to come there to a situation like that, Los Angeles, great stadium, potential Hall of Fame quarterback. How in the world are you going to keep trying to make it work with Brandon Staley when Sean Payton is sitting right there? If I'm the Chargers, I'm making it very simple. Here's our first-round draft pick, and Sean Payton, you can sign for whatever the hell you want to sign for. And no one's arguing that. Here's your first-round draft pick, right?
Correct. I mean, the first-round draft pick isn't going to hurt them that much. I mean, just based on the talent that we just went over they have on the team already. You bring the guy in that is going to help mold and take Herbert even to probably another level that he has, and you become a Super Bowl contender. And you need a coach like that in that division. Like, Patrick Mahomes isn't going anywhere. I mean, the Raiders are going to Raider, and I think we all assume, depending on who gets the head coaching job at Denver, they probably are better next year. Like,
can you imagine if Denver gets Sean Payton now because the Chargers missed out on that? Could you imagine how much big of a blunder that is? Because I promise you, Walmart has no problem paying him.
So my
No,
thing though
not at all.
too, Gene, is that we talk about Staley being, this blunder of a coach that he is. If they got Sean Payton and Justin Herbert look, like a typical like I'll say how Drew Brees did in New Orleans, then we're having a whole different conversation. We're not going to put it in perspective that Trevor Lawrence doesn't have these weapons and things like that. We're going to just say Justin Herbert was playing great football and they're continuously in the playoffs and they continuously win. And that'd be a completely different conversation than the one we're having right now. So I'm going to stand tight on what I said before about, I think I would take Herbert over Trevor Lawrence, but I think a big part of that too is, Brandon Staley is there and Trevor Lawrence has Doug Peterson, and we see what a coach can do for a quarterback.
I think the other thing that's going to be nuts is, Gene brought this up at the beginning of the season when we were talking about Herbert. He's now going to be in the league. This will be next year. His fourth year, third year, fourth, and he'll be on his third offensive coordinator now.
Yep,
like that's wild.
And it's not just the offensive
to Gene's
coordinator.
point. No, my point is to your point about not bringing Peyton in. At some point, you got to get this kid settled and have some kind of stability around him. They fired Anthony Lynn, which I was a big fan of. I thought that was a crappy move to begin with. They bring in Staley. Staley hasn't gotten it done. Now you fired another OC. Now you're going to bring another OC in. So he's going to be his third guy, third offensive scheme in 4 years. That's crazy. That's not what you want around it. Like we're all saying, it's a potential Hall of Fame quarterback. You gotta figure it out. And it's like anything else. If you go out and sign the best player on the market, why would you not go out and get a proven head coach who is an offensive minded guy that took somebody like Drew Brees, who was really good, and took him into top 10, top 12 all time, if not higher. Some people have him higher. When you have a 25-year-old kid sitting there that has the ability to be absolutely great. It just makes no sense to me.
My question is, Anthony Lynn gets fired. He had 4 seasons as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. He went 9-7 and 12-4 with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers on a down year went 5-11. They get Justin Herbert. He wins the rookie of the year. He goes 7-9.
Yeah.
Why did he get fired? I just want consistency, man. Brandon Staley gets that job and does nothing with that roster, with everything that's there. I just want to be consistent with me, okay? And it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that there's a difference and a disparity in their culture. That's the way I'll put it. I'm not going to keep saying race, but it's race. It is. I'm sorry. It constantly happens. African-American coach gets fired after having a rookie year. And this guy, Staley, gets every chance under the sun with Justin Herbert. It's bullshit. Sorry, I'm done. I can't keep bringing that up week after week because it just bothers me and it frustrates me to no end. We'll talk about Jaguars Chiefs in a minute. Let's talk about the 2 other games. We kind of talked about Bengals Ravens a bit. Bill, you weren't here. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I felt like the Bengals didn't play great. I felt like the Ravens played them really strong, but Lamar Jackson plays. I think the Baltimore Ravens win that game.
I tend to agree. I tend to agree with a lot of what J.K. Dobbins said after the game. He was averaging 8 yards a carry. He's a stronger back. He's not a halfback per se. And it must be like a Harbaugh thing. I don't know what the hell's going on with that, but it was to see that twice in the course of 3 weeks is kind of nuts. That game, that play changed the game. That play won the game.
That was the game.
It was the game. I don't think the Bengals played particularly well. I think Baltimore played their hearts out. I really do. I think Huntley had for being banged up, there was no way he was 100%. Minus the fumble, I think he gave them every chance in the world to win. I think Baltimore's defense showed up. I think Burrow. It's kind of weird. I felt like Cincinnati got conservative in the second half of that game as well. Baltimore had long drives. Cincinnati didn't have the ball a lot. They took the shots early with Chase and scored, and now I feel like they got a little conservative. And I think that's a little, I don't want to say concerning. I just think that's weird. It's not really Zach Taylor's MO. And you obviously have a guy back there that's not going to put you in bad spots in Burrow. Let him take his shots, like run your offense. I mean, that's why that team's good. You have Joe Burrow and you have these 3 wide receivers and a running back. Like run your offense. That part was a little bit weird to me. But I agree with Gene. I mean, I think if Lamar Jackson plays, I think Baltimore absolutely walks out of that stadium with the win. Maybe it's just the game they had to get out of the system, but they better play better this week, or they're going to go home, and they're going to go home.
I think part of it too is, yes, I do think if Lamar was there, they would have won, but I don't know why John Harbaugh would call a quarterback sneak from the 1.5 yard line. Like that was a pretty far sneak. It wasn't like he was, inches away. And for them, you would think that, in the huddle or, in his headset and in his helmet, he probably said, quarterback sneak, go over the top. I'm sure they coached that up exactly how it happened, but I agree with JK. Why wouldn't you give the ball to your power back? J.K. Dobbins could punch that in. Justice Hill was there. Like they got plenty of running backs. I don't know why you don't give the ball to them in that situation. So I do think that was a coaching blunder just because of the spot where they were at. If they were at, inches away and it was inside the 1 yard line, I'm all for it. But that was a far quarterback sneak.
So I follow what you guys are saying there. The one thing I took out of that game, and this is a weird takeaway because it had nothing to do with the quarterbacks or running backs or wide receivers. Man, Roquan Smith might be the best linebacker in football, not named Michael Parsons. Like, I know he's unbelievable, and he's going to be worth every dollar on that team. Absolutely unbelievable. He looked incredible that game.
I think my other big takeaway,
Chicago just wouldn't want to keep him around to build a team around Fields. It's just whatever.
The other big takeaway for me was that Bengals offensive line looked like an offensive line that had many holes on it because guys were hurt. And so I'm going to be really curious to see how Buffalo schemes up stuff to get those guys out of position and get to Joe Burrow, because I think it's going to be a party at the quarterback.
We covered AFC previews, so let's do the AFC divisional round, and then we'll move over to the NFC. We'll kind of do it that way this week. Your Chiefs, Jaguars. I love Trevor Lawrence. I've been really high on Trevor Lawrence. Andy Reid off a bye is absolutely unbelievable, and Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. I got the Chiefs winning this one. I think they win it comfortable. I think it's a very high-scoring game because I think that Jacksonville will come in prepared. You got the underlining story tone of Doug Peterson versus Andy Reid, which I love. But give me the Chiefs in this one, and I'm going to tell you it'll probably be 37-24, something of that nature.
Dude, I do like the high scoring.
So do I. I love the storyline you just brought up with Dougie P and Andy Reid. I also think, I think Doug Peterson is going to be in their heads and tell them, like, listen, you guys are going out and play with house money. Go play your hearts out. You've no pressure on you whatsoever. We're going to Kansas City. Just go out and do your thing. That is the one thing. We saw it here in Philly. Doug Peterson has the innate ability to get locker rooms to completely buy in and be on the same page and play together and play for each other. I think you're going to see that type of effort out of Jacksonville this weekend. I do agree with you. I think Kansas City is going to be too much. I think Jacksonville will have success against that defense, though. I think they'll scheme up enough stuff for Trevor to get his deep shots, and I think they'll get ETN mixed in as well. I like that game to be a little closer. I think it's. I'm not going to say Kansas City doesn't win comfy, but I think maybe they get a late score to get them there. I'll go Kansas City 34, Jacksonville 23. But I think going into the fourth quarter, I think it's a game.
Okay. I said 37-24. 30.
Yeah.
You're off by 1 point.
I'm just saying I think they score late to get it there. I think Kansas City like Jacksonville needs to stop to get off the field, and they can, and Kansas City scores with like 2 minutes to go and gets us to that gap.
I actually somewhat think a little bit differently than you guys. I think Kansas City goes out and they put up points. And I think there's going to be a time where that game's 21-7, 21-3, something along the lines of that. And I think ultimately it probably ends up Chiefs 38. I like 38-24, so it'd be a 14 point game. But I think it's going to be a lot of Jags just chasing. And I think once the game gets later, the Chiefs are going to be playing more, relaxed defense, and they're going to let up the plays underneath. And I think that's when Trevor Lawrence will start to, manage the game and put points up on the board. But I like the Chiefs to roll on that one. I think, we won't see 4 interceptions again. And so I don't think the Chiefs will have as many possessions as what the Chargers did. But I also think that the Chiefs are going to punch the ball into the end zone, and you won't see as many field goals as what the Chargers had a week ago. So I like the Chiefs by 2 possessions, but I don't think this is ever really a game outside of the first quarter.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you right now, most people are picking this as their upset special for the divisional round. Bengals, Bills. I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be. I have the Buffalo Bills in this one in Buffalo. I think the game will be close because Joe Burrow will keep it close. I'll start here. I have the Buffalo Bills, and I think the Buffalo Bills win this one. I don't think it'll be really. I think the end of the fourth quarter will come to the Bengals trying to come back in this game and make it look closer than it is. I think the Buffalo Bills score early. I think they score often. The Bengals look like their secondary was trying to stop the run so hard that they kept getting abused. Eli Apple got burnt, like burnt toast. Looked like the Super Bowl all over again. I like Buffalo in this one. I don't think Josh Allen turns the ball over 5 times this week. I think the Bills roll.
I mean, I also think the Bills are going to roll in this one. I think you saw a lot of the deficiencies with that Bengals team, and I think that's what the Bills are going to see on film. Like I just mentioned, I think that Bengals offensive line is really hampered by those injuries. Missing 3 of their starting 5 offensive linemen is going to play a huge part because Buffalo has guys that can get after the quarterback even without Von Miller playing. And I think, we saw Josh Allen struggle a bit last week against that Dolphins team, but this is a completely different game this week. The Bengals have struggled in their secondary, and Eli Apple, of course, we saw his struggles last week. I think Josh Allen and company are going to be able to throw the ball over the yard against that Bengals team. And I think if you get into a shootout with Buffalo, you got to put points on the board, and that means Joe Burrow's dropping back a lot, and that also means having a party at the quarterback. So I think Buffalo wins this one rather comfy. I think it's a 2-possession game. Bengals score late to make it a 1-possession game. I like this one 31-24.
Bill?
I agree with a little bit of what each of you said. I lean towards a little bit more with Gene, though. I think it's a close game. I think it's a good game. I think Buffalo's going to be able to make enough plays down the stretch with Allen and Diggs and Davis on the outside with that banged up Bengals secondary. That I think when they have to get yards and then to get chunk plays, I think they're going to be able to get it. I think the Bengals can stay in this game early though and establish some kind of run with Mixon, limit the possessions Allen and that offense get. I think that's how they stay in this game. I also think I think Burrow is going to play well. I do. I think this is kind of the exciting quarterback matchup of the next round. Both AFC games, honestly, but this is kind of the more established one per se with Burrow already, having a Super Bowl appearance. But I think Joey plays well. I think he keeps Bengals in the game. I will go. I think Buffalo scores probably a couple minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and I'll go 31-24 Buffalo.
Time to move over to the NFC. The Giants, who I called upset over the Minnesota Vikings, who I said was the biggest fraud 13-win team you'll ever see in your life. We went the point differential last week when we talked about it. Vikings are frauds. I think this is hilarious. I've seen all the Giants fans that were at the Vikings stadium saying we want Philly and F Philly. And I listen, that's never come back to burn anybody. That's never come back to burn anyone in the past. I don't think I've ever been this confident over an Eagles playoff game in my life. I really don't. I am so confident that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to destroy. I don't think this game's close. I think it's a blowout. And the same thing I told you about the Cowboys last week. I said that would be the blowout of the week. Everyone thought I was nuts. It was like 13-point spreads. And I said the Cowboys are going to be the blowout of the week over the Buccaneers. I'm telling you right now, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be the blowout of the week over the New York Giants. Saturday night, you don't even have to. You can keep your dinner reservations at 10 o'clock because that game's going to be over at halftime. The Eagles are going to destroy the Giants. And here's my point. Here's how I'll make that point for you. Daniel Jones is getting overhyped for having a great game, which was a great game, versus the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. The Vikings are last in the NFL in passing yards and last in the NFL in rushing yards allowed. Do you realize how awful? It's a shame they're not last in the NFL in points allowed. But in every other category, they're last in the NFL defensively. The Giants are going to get absolutely demolished this week. It's going to be a bloodbath. You'll be watching the UFC pay-per-view by halftime. I truly believe that. I'll go Eagles 31, Giants 10.
I don't like when I always agree with you across the board, but here we are again. It's everything the Giants did last week, and like you said, Daniel Jones I think played really well. Execute the game plan like he was supposed to do. Took his runs when he could, got chunk plays, kept that offense moving. Did what he was supposed to do. Had a really good game. I mean, you can't take anything away from him. He's not going to be able to run. He's not going to have that success against the Eagles defense. He's not going to be throwing to wide open wide receivers like he did last week against Minnesota. Saquon's not going to get off like he did last week against Minnesota. And then on top of that, their defense is going to have the same struggles, if not worse, against the Eagles offense. So I just really don't see, Giants fans can say what they want. The whole cliche, you can't beat the same team 3 times in a year, yada, yada, yada. You have to make a compelling point to me of where they're better and how they're going to win this game, and I haven't had a Giants fan do that yet. I will go more lopsided than Gene. I'm thinking something 38-13. I agree. I think it's over at halftime. I think Jalen's going to have a great game. I think A.J. Brown and Devonta are both going to eat, and as long as they don't go crazy and come out and try to throw the ball 16 times, I think you mix Miles in at the beginning, keep the Giants off balance, and I think it's going to be a highlight reel of the game for that offense. So I like the Eagles big, move on, and then see what happens next week. But I think I agree with Gene. I think the Eagles destroy the Giants.
So I agree with a lot of the same sentiments that you guys had. I do think this game will start off a little bit slower, and I don't know when it's going to be when the Eagles finally kick it into gear. Obviously, having the week off, it's a blessing and it's a curse because you get the extra rest for those guys. Those guys get a little bit healthier, but then they also come in a little bit rusty. They're not clicking, timing's a little bit off, things like that. And with this being a divisional opponent, I do think that first quarter, first half, it's going to be a little bit tighter. I think it'll be very similar to what you saw in that 49ers Seahawks game. I think the vision of that game is really how I see this game kind of going. I think the Eagles are going to be up 7 at halftime, and in the second half, they're going to really get it rolling, and it's going to be that blowout. So I think, by the end of the third quarter, the Eagles are going to be up 3 scores, or maybe even 4 at that point. But I think this is a blowout, but I don't think we get there until after halftime. I think Brian Daboll's a good coach. I think he'll have a good game plan for him coming in. And I also ultimately think the Giants are going to try and limit possessions where, we saw Daniel Jones throw the ball a lot. We saw the Giants throw the ball a lot last week. He was also getting a lot of his scrambles in. But I think this week you'll see a lot more design run plays, and you'll see them try to feed Saquon more. And I think they really try to limit possessions there. And so I'll ultimately go Eagles 31, Giants 13. But I think at halftime, this might be a 17-13 ball game. I really do.
Okay, I can understand that. The Eagles have definitely started flat before. They started slow before. I just think that with the extra week of preparation, I think that Philadelphia Eagles team, and I even said it this week when we were talking about practice, Jalen Hurts was back to throwing. A.J. Brown got his rest day. I think that them playing the Giants on somewhat of a short week, Sunday to Saturday, with the Eagles getting the bye week is a huge differentiator. Yeah, I could see the game being close in the first half. I could. I just think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be too much. I think you're going to see Jalen Hurts almost right away show that his shoulder's fine. I could see a scramble play where he runs the guy over and you hear that Eagles fan base get into the game.
I think honestly, I think especially if they open with the ball, I think you see Jalen Hurts take a deep shot, first down or second down. I really do. And I'll tell you, environment wise, that place is going to be nuts on Saturday night. I would not want to be a Giants fan in that stadium Saturday night. They're going to open those parking lots at 8:00 in the morning. You're going to be Eagles fans drinking for 12 hours before kickoff. Good luck. You wear an Eagles, you wear a Giants jersey in that stadium Saturday. You deserve anything that you're going to get. You've been warned. You know how it works. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Be a Giants fan. Go and root for your team. Just don't wear a Giants jersey. That's all I can tell you.
All right. Well, we all think the Eagles win in that one, and I'm so confident about it. Here's a fun one, and we'll start with Bill. We'll go reverse order. Bill, Cottrell, me. Cowboys, after winning that game on Monday Night Football, which, I don't want to pat myself. My back is hurting from patting it so hard. Told you the Cowboys were going to dominate that Bucs team. That Bucs team wasn't going to stink all year and then wake up in the playoffs. Just wasn't going to happen. The Cowboys are now going to play the number one defense in football, the 49ers. Brock Purdy, undefeated starter. This is the first top 5 defense he's facing this year, which will be the Cowboys. Let's see. How do you guys see this game going? Cowboys at 49ers. Now, it is a 2-day advantage. Cowboys played on Monday on the road, and the 49ers played at home on a Saturday. So it's a 2.5-day advantage for the 49ers as far as rest preparation. I mean, that's what you earn with the number 2 overall seed. But how do you see this one going? And Shai, we'll start with you.
I'll just make it simple off the bat. I think Brock Purdy stays undefeated. I think San Francisco gets it done at home. I think Dallas had success against the Buccaneers. Running the ball, they didn't run the ball great. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball against San Fran at all. I think their only hope is Dak to have success deep against the corners from San Fran if they can get CeeDee Lamb involved and Michael Gallup. Zeke didn't look great. Pollard's still clearly bothered by whatever he's got going on with his leg. And I think San Fran just has enough weapons, and the way they're utilizing both Debo back in the backfield out wide, they're really scripting a lot of plays for Brandon Ayuk right now. And then of course you have C-Mac on top of all that. I think if Purdy stays within the game plan, continues to execute, I think Kyle Shanahan's got a great game plan set up. And I like San Fran's defense. It's the best in the league. It's as good as Dallas is. It's definitely better. I think Dak probably throws 1, maybe 2 picks. I say it's a close game midway through the third, and then I'll say San Fran pulls away a little bit. I'll go San Fran 31, Dallas 21.
Interesting. Cottrell?
So I think Bill's the last thing Bill said, I think, is the biggest part of this game. I think this is going to be a lot on Kyle Shanahan's shoulders, and he's put Brock Purdy in great positions so far since Brock Purdy's took over as starter of that team. And I am seeing a lot of people overhype Brock and saying, he's making some elite throws and, be a good system quarterback, things like that. I think Kyle Shanahan is really just putting him in these positions to be successful. Dan Orlovsky had a great breakdown of that San Francisco offense, of how they move players around and get things to open up. And ultimately, I'm going to trust Kyle Shanahan more than I trust Mike. I just don't. I think this. Well, they won their first playoff game, so I think we're going to get McCarthy back next year. But I really don't think that Cowboys team can replicate what we saw against that Buccaneers team. The Bucs got no pressure on them. They're playing a lot of man coverage, and people were just running open. And I don't think you're going to get that this week. You don't get blown assignments when you play the San Francisco 49ers team. And I do think Dak is gonna turn the ball over this week. It was, I think, 7 straight games before this last one against the Bucs where he had a turnover in it. And so I think you're going to get that this week. And Shanahan isn't going to ask Brock to do too much. Don't turn the ball over. Get the ball out to our playmakers and be smart with the football. So I think this will be a close game, but I got the 49ers winning it 24-20. And I think Dallas will have the ball with a chance to win the game. And I think that's when we get that Dak interception, 4th and 8, 4th and 10. Dak throws the ball, it's intercepted, and that's all she wrote.
Okay. You guys are both on San Fran. I feel like that I have to hype this up because I know exactly where I'm going. And the reason I want to go third year is for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, you've already made it clear how you're going.
The Dallas Cowboys are going to win this football game. The Purdy party is over. And I think that what you're going to see in this football game is a real defensive coordinator that's going to scheme and going to press and make Purdy beat you over the top with his arm. I hate to say this. I hate the Cowboys. And I think the Eagles basically get a bye into the Super Bowl if San Fran figures out a way to win this football game, because there's no way Brock Purdy is going on the road in Philadelphia in that hostile environment in the cold weather and beating the Philadelphia Eagles defense. It's not happening. Like, the Eagles could kneel the ball the entire game and win that football game over the 49ers if they come to Philadelphia. That's a joke. I hope anyone that's a 49ers fan is listening. You take your dignity and you lose by 3 points at home to Dallas instead of coming to Philadelphia and getting beat by 50. Because that's what's going to happen. You come to Philadelphia with Brock Purdy and that weather and that defense. It's just not happening. Let me help you here. Dallas wins this football game because Dallas can move the ball in more than one way. You have an elite wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. You have 2 running backs that can move the football. Dak Prescott can move it with his legs. And that defense with Micah Parsons, by the way, Micah Parsons is the best defensive player I think I might ever watch in my life. Him and Aaron Donald, it's just Micah Parsons is absurd. The guy's nuts. He's all over the field. The disruptions that he made, Tom Brady tried to throw a screen pass. Micah Parsons smacked down in the backfield, unevaded to the quarterback. He's just that athletic. Watching him play is like, I hope he becomes a free agent. I hope that there's some way you can get him in Philadelphia. I'd give whatever. What do you want? I'll take it. Take him. Dallas wins this football game, and it's set up. It's set up perfectly. Cooper Rush versus Jalen Hurts. Dak Prescott versus Gardner Minshew. The trilogy. Dak versus Jalen. Hurts versus Prescott. In the trilogy in Philadelphia. I'll tell you, if the NFL didn't script this, I want you to think about this real quick. What was the most televised watch game in the entire NFL last year that wasn't the Super Bowl? Chiefs Buffalo. All right, am I correct? Best game of the year, Chiefs Buffalo. Is that fair, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Eagles Cowboys on one side, a rematch of Chiefs Bills on the other side. You can't turn your TV off the entire Sunday. And then you get to your Bills-Eagles Super Bowl. The 2 craziest fan bases in the country. You got people throwing people through chairs. You got jails in the stadium. Tables and chairs. It's like a WWE event. I got Eagles versus the Cowboys. Chiefs versus the Bills. Any comments, gentlemen?
I think a lot of the Cowboys thing. I can't forget about what happened 2 weeks ago, and I know they looked great last week against the Bucs, but I just don't see how, like, even against that Bucs team, they forced Tom Brady to throw an interception. They were continuously getting them off the field. I really think that 49ers team can scheme up stuff where you're going to have to make – you talk about making Brock Purdy beat you. If I'm the 49ers, I make Dak Prescott beat me. And, you know, like Shally said, Zeke didn't look great. Like, he was running the ball. He was running the ball and didn't look great. And then Tony Pollard, he was getting to the outside pretty well, but he wasn't the Tony Pollard that we had seen for the majority of the year. So you're going to be put in a spot where Dak's going to have to replicate his performance from last week, and I just don't see that happening.
I think the one thing, just if we're forecasting ahead, you kept saying the weather with Purdy. I don't think the weather would bother him. I think he'd be rattled coming here with the fan base and the atmosphere. I don't think the weather's going to bother him, though. I mean, he played at Iowa State. He played in a bunch of crap weather. I don't think that's going to be an issue, but I think it's going to be a good game, man. I think it's going to be a battle of. Problem is, I kind of lead to Cottrell. If you're giving me, the coach where the coach is going to make a difference in a game, I find it hard pressed to make me pick Mike McCarthy over Kyle Shanahan.
I hear you, and listen, I wouldn't mind it because I would much rather play. I think there's a much better chance of the Dallas Cowboys beating Philadelphia in Philadelphia than there is the San Francisco 49ers. Much better chance.
I disagree.
So do I.
It's fair. All right, so we you guys still sticking with your Super Bowl predictions? I still have Bills over Eagles.
I forgot what I had, honestly. Chiefs Eagles, I think, is what my Super Bowl was.
Yeah, you had Chiefs over Eagles, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sticking with it.
And I think Bill had Bills over Eagles too.
Yeah, I think so.
Unfortunately, I still think it's Bills over Eagles. But if the Eagles get there, get me to the dance, and then we'll talk about the dance. Get me there. Get me to the prom, and then we'll worry about taking the prom queen home.
I will say too. I can't forget about 2 weeks ago when I talk about the Cowboys. I can't forget about last week when I talk about the Bills. Like Skylar Thompson he didn't play great, and somehow that was still a 3-point game, and Miami had a shot to go win. So I think Buffalo rebounds, but that was definitely something that I took a little mental note of.
Like, I'm just going to throw stuff through my head real quick, man. I think the Eagles match up well with Buffalo. I really do. The more I think about it, that's a good game. It's a really good game. I don't want to homer it, but I mean, I'm not. If I'm the Eagles and if I'm thinking about that defense, I'm not intimidated by Buffalo at all.
Get me to the prom.
Yeah, I agree. Show up to the dance, ask the girl, see what happens.
Listen, get me to the prom, and we'll see if I can take the prom queen home. I'll tell you right now, Philadelphia Eagles, be ready for a big playoff run, because if for whatever reason San Fran wins that game, start buying your tickets to the Super Bowl. You're there. Don't worry about anything else. You're there. All right. Well, we have to move on. We have some UFC action to get into. What a fun show it's been so far. I was missing Shelly for the first 30 minutes. Shelly, I never knew how much I missed you until you were gone for 30 minutes. I was panicking, man. I had sweats. I was like, where's Shelly? I'm like writing in the chat. We got to get him in. I gave you my logins. You have all my password information now. You guys can steal all my money. I sent you all my passwords. Please don't do that. I'd appreciate it. I've already had that. I give you playoff pick 'em. Joseph Jeffers. There's a 4-game parlay, and it pays out about plus 690. Give me, and I'm just making it very clear. Give me Bills money line. Give me Eagles money line. I don't like playing spreads in the playoffs because weird things happen. Get into genius. Come on, Godfrey. But give me Bills money line, Chiefs money line, Eagles money line, and Cowboys money line. Plays about plus 690. $100 better, wins 690 on that one. That's what I would play this week. Last week, I played a 6-game parlay on all 6 wildcard games. I hit it. I also hit a same-game parlay on the Giants-Vikings, and I missed a $900 same-game parlay. All I needed was a Zeke touchdown. Zeke scores a touchdown. I figured that game would be a blowout. He would get his 1-yard touchdown and feed me, and someone's been feeding him too much because it looks slow as shit. But 2 1-yard touchdowns, one the Gallup and one the Dak Prescott. Drove me nuts. And then Schultz had like an 8-yarder. I figured Zeke would get one of them. So I missed an $800 parlay on that one. But other than that, I had a great weekend. Great weekend. So there's your pick 'em, Joseph Jeffers. Hope you won some money last week. Gave away some good picks last week. I'm telling you the 4 teams that are going to be playing next Sunday. Listen, I'm not just sketching butterflies over here. The 4 teams playing next Sunday: Eagles, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills. Book it.
Agree with everything but one.
I know. Hey, listen, And I would be happy to lose my parlay if the Cowboys lose. I'd be happy to. Just telling you what I think is going to happen.
I mean, I guess in that situation, you'd be in a win-win, though, because if the Cowboys lose, then it's like, great, the Cowboys lost. If the Cowboys win, you're like, we get to beat the Cowboys this week. So
I fear zero cow. I don't fear the Cowboys at all. I don't,
I'm
especially
aware.
in Philadelphia, especially in that weather, especially watching Dakota Rain Prescott constantly choke when the moment is big. I have more faith in my quarterback, my defense, than Dallas will ever have in theirs.
I 100% agree. That's why I don't think the Cowboys win this week, but we'll see.
I don't think it's going to be Purdy. It's not going to be Purdy in San Fran.
Purdy on the Nick Foles run right now.
Listen, I got to give the kid credit, man. He made a play versus Seattle last week. Let me stop for a minute. Let's turn the Brock Purdy hate down a little bit.
I know what you're talking about.
What
that play he made, talking about.
Sideline to sideline play, and he threw a dot, and Brandon Ayuk dropped it. I mean, it was incredible play.
That was
best play I've ever seen Brock Purdy make in 5 years.
That's an incredible throw.
It was great. Got to give the kid credit, man. He's doing exactly what he should be doing with his opportunity. He's going to make himself a lot of money. I just think San Francisco would be silly to throw away a blue chip talent like Trey Lance or throw away an opportunity to bring in Tom Brady to keep Brock Purdy because he runs the system very well.
Brock Purdy is not going to make himself a lot of money. That's the one thing that I do disagree with. I think best case scenario for him, somebody trades for him. But if he's not in that Shanahan system, I don't think you're seeing the same things happen for him. And obviously he's still in the rookie deal, so you still got to wait 3 or 4 years before he can get new money anyway. And I think by then he's going to show you what he really is, and it's not what we've seen so far. It's not in Shanahan's system.
So hypothetically, what happens if the 49ers win the Super Bowl?
You have to start him next year. That means you went on a 13-game winning streak.
Have to.
You have to. Doesn't mean that I think that's the right thing to do. You have to.
I think it depends. I think if Trey Lance isn't ready by week 1 or training camp or whatever next year, then you have to. But I think you make it an open competition.
And if Trey Lance wins it, the first sign of him not having a great first game, they're going to be calling for the guy that won 13 straight to win this Super Bowl.
But that's the
Trey
luxury.
Lance in the worst position possible.
But
100%.
that's the luxury you have, though. Like, it's not like you have to get rid of Brock. Like, he's on a rookie deal.
Trey Lance is already.
Lance.
I know.
Trey Lance is already shown you he's a bit of a whiner when he was upset that they brought Jimmy G back into training camp. Do you guys remember that? When he was like, "What is this? Why is Jimmy G here? Like, I'm supposed to be the guy." You don't remember that?
I'm not disagreeing with you.
There was a little bit of a whiner in him. I seen a little whiner in him.
Yeah, but I just don't think you can't move up that many spots, have Trey Lance there, and not at least have it be an open competition. Like, I don't think you can automatically just give it to Brock Purdy. You see who wins it in camp and through the preseason, and if Trey Lance wins it, then obviously you'd be in good shape. But if he doesn't, then you probably get back a haul for Trey Lance, to be honest. Maybe not, obviously not like a Russell Wilson caliber haul, but you're still going to get probably a first-round pick for him.
For Mr. Irrelevant. 100% you make that deal.
No. I meant for Trey Lance.
You talking about for Trey.
You're not getting a first-rounder for Brock.
All right, guys, we got some UFC to talk, and I'm looking forward to this UFC card because what I'm going to do is I'm going to DVR it. And, I have the 2 TVs. I can actually do both. I can watch that and watch the Eagles. The Eagles will be on Saturday night. Maybe I'll have the pay-per-view on the other card. But this is actually, low-key, a way better card than I expect it to be. Look at the headline. Teixeira versus Hill. Does that look like a pay-per-view you want to buy? Not really. Figueiredo Moreno 4. Like, what is this? Like, this is like Scream movies? Like, they're fighting for the 4th time? This is absurd.
I mean, all 3 have been good, like, great fights, though. But, yeah.
The last one wasn't that good.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was.
I love the entire card. And I think there's some live dogs on here. And if you're looking to make a little bit of extra coin and you want the plus money, I got you. So we're going to talk about we could talk about the three main fights, but the two main fights, Figueiredo versus Moreno 4. Cottrell, I think we're on the opposite end here again.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we talked about it a little bit before, but I think that the one thing for me is that you notice on the card a lot of these guys are from Brazil. Well, this card is going to be in Rio de Janeiro, so a lot of these guys are going to be fighting in their backyard, and that's a big part of why I think who I'm picking to win these fights. You know, Gilbert Burns, he's going to have the crowd behind him. Figueiredo is going to have the crowd behind him. Glover Teixeira is going to have the crowd behind him. And I think we're going to talk about the co-main now. I got Figueiredo winning that one. I think Moreno is tough as nails, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Moreno won that fight. But I think it's going to be a 5-rounder, and I think it's going to go 3-2 Figueiredo. And, you know, our adage is to be the champion, you have to beat the champ. And I don't see Moreno beating the champ in that aspect in his backyard. And so I got Figueiredo coming out with the unanimous decision.
Okay. Are we not doing the Gilbert fight, or are we just saying like we're not going in depth on that one?
We can. I don't mind. Listen, guys.
Doesn't matter to me either way.
Pretty open to me. I think Gilbert Burns is a terrible matchup for Neil Magny. I think Gilbert Burns is going to destroy Neil Magny because of a million different reasons. Gilbert's stronger. He's not going to get knocked out. He's he has great takedown defense. I don't know how Neil Magny wins that fight. I don't. So to me, agreed. I think Gilbert wins that one, and I think it's a walkthrough. But I kind of want to break down these two in depth, and I'm going to give you a little bit of extra juice on the side.
So, Joseph Jeffers brought up a good point. Moreno wanted this fight on this card. I think Figueiredo is a great fighter. I think Moreno is a great fighter. This to me, I don't know why. Moreno is always the kid that wins when everything's stacked against him, when, you know, everybody is going to pick against him because it's in Brazil. Everybody thinks Figueiredo is just going to retain. This is going to be the end of not a trilogy. I don't know what you would call 4. But it's the kid shows up in really tough spots. I think he's tough as nails, like Cottrell said. I think he pulls it out somehow. I really do. I think this is the disappointment on the card for the Brazilians. I think Moreno finds a way. I think it's 3-2. I think it goes all 5 as well. If he was a football player, a basketball player, or something like that, I'd call him a gamer. I think he shows up in the bright spots all the time.
Yeah.
And he always exceeds expectations. Everybody's going to pick against him. It's just a gut feeling. I'm going Brandon Moreno.
I'm going Brandon Moreno also. I think Brandon Moreno is a tougher guy. I really believe that. I think Figueiredo is a great fighter. We've picked these fights multiple times. I think they're both great fighters. I just think Brandon Moreno brings this one home. If I had to give you, I don't think it's a knockout. I think it's a 5-round decision. I think it'll be a 4-1 decision. I think Brandon Moreno is just a tougher fighter that night. I think that when these two get in the ring, anything happen. But I think Brandon Moreno brings this one home. I think he's the tougher fighter on this night. Cottrell, tell me why I'm wrong.
I mean, I think the one part that, at least to me, I feel like doesn't get glossed. It kind of gets glossed over is that obviously Moreno was a great fighter and he deserved to win the belt. Like when he won the belt, it was 100% deserved. But just to shed light on it, Figueiredo was in danger of missing weight in that weigh-in. Like Figueiredo was overweight, had to go back and do the hard cut to get to the championship weight. And, you know, in that fight that time around, Figueiredo didn't look like himself. And I do think he was gassed a little bit because of that weight cut issue that he had. Every fight that they've had has been close. And I think you're going to get more of that. But I think because Figueiredo has the belt right now, you're not going to give it to Moreno in a close fight. I just don't see that happening. And it's in Brazil. I just think everything aligns for Figueiredo to retain.
Okay. Before we get into Glover Jamal Hill, I will break down something. I think Paul Craig is a sneaky underdog versus Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker never shows up for these fights. I think he's super overrated because he's flashy. I think Paul Craig actually wins that fight. He's well rounded. He can knock you out. He can sub you. He can TKO you. I think Johnny.
I disagree. Paul Craig is not well rounded. I don't think he can knock out Johnny Walker. I think
believe
it's
he
gonna.
can. Johnny Walker's got a very, very thin chin.
I think Paul Craig is going to try and get Johnny Walker to the ground and lay on him for 3 rounds, and that's probably what's going to happen because that's just how Paul Craig is. But that's the dud of these 5 for sure. I think Paul Craig loves to get people on the ground and just lay on them.
Now, Lucky Lauren Murphy is a plus. Let me get this number right because I think it's absurd. Plus 360 dog versus Jessica Andrade. And I think this fight is more of a coin flip. I really believe that. I'm not saying that Lucky Lauren Murphy wins this fight 100%. But I will tell you this. That girl's tough. She's tough as nails. Jessica Andrade is boring. I think Lucky Lauren Murphy wins the fight. I really believe that. And I think that if I believe that, I have to take the odds of plus 360. What in the world has Jessica Andrade done to be a minus 530 favorite over Lauren Murphy? I don't understand it. I don't get it. If you want, throw $50 on it. You don't have to go nuts, but Lauren Murphy's going to be in this fight. She doesn't get knocked out. She doesn't get stopped. She's tough as nails. Watch the way Valentina beats the shit out of her and tell me that girl's not tough. I don't get it. What, Bill, can I ask you a question? What on God's planet has Jessica Andrade done to be a 530 favorite? Is this like the second coming of is this like the new Ronda Rousey? Is this Valentina all over again? It's Jessica Andrade.
I hadn't even looked at the odds of that fight, so when you said it pre-show, I actually thought you were kidding the first time you said it. It's intriguing. It's one of those things where it scares me enough to think that somebody knows something that I don't. So that's a big number. That's a big number for her, especially like you said. Lauren Murphy is not the easiest person in the world to finish. She's going to be there. I just don't. Andrade just doesn't have the flashy or the sudden type of skill to end a fight. To TKO somebody or flash knockdown, something like that. So that's interesting to me. There's a lot of interesting numbers being floated around there on that line. Definitely money to be made. Like I said, the only thing that concerns me is when I look at something like that and my gut instinct matches my head, then I just always worry that somebody knows something that I don't.
Control, why is Jessica Andrade a minus 530 favorite?
I think a lot of it is because of the image that we saw Lauren Murphy in going up against Valentina, because that was really the first time that she stepped up in the caliber fighter that she was going up against. And we saw how one-sided that was. Now, with that said, obviously Valentina was a one-sided matchup when she was going up against Jessica Andrade as well.
Knocked her in 2 rounds.
Yeah, correct. But the thing is, though, is that Jessica Andrade has some quality wins on her resume within the last 3 years. Caitlin Chikagan is a very, very good win, and she knocked her out. And so I think that dynamic of it is probably why people think that this fight will be so one-sided in the Andrade win. But I think that the safe bet would be this fight going to decision. I don't know what the odds are on that, but I think that's the safe way to go. I feel like if Andrade is that much of a favorite, they probably think that she's going to finish her. So I would imagine that the odds for that fight going the distance wouldn't be crazy.
It's almost even money at over 2.5.
Yeah,
minus 136. That's a beautiful bet. I love that.
I think that's the safe way to go.
Listen, I'm probably going to parlay all 5 fights and then bet them straight. But I don't. I'm taking Lauren Murphy plus 360. It's just too good of odds. Maybe they're sucking me in. Maybe they're just hosing me. But I don't know how that doesn't. I really just don't think that Jessica Andrade is that good. Okay, so let's get into the main event. Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. Glover's like what, 58 now? It's like 57. Can you help me out? What his age?
I think 43. I think
Oh, I thought he was 50.
he's old, very old.
Jamal Hill is a slight favorite. 11-1. One loss was knockout in the first round or sub in the first round.
It was recent. His loss. I forgot who was against, but we lost Bill again. Oh no.
I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm still standing. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Paul Craig knocked him out with a minute and 59. And by the way, Mr. Paul Craig knocked out Jamal Hill in the first round. No
Not a Paul
knockout
Craig.
power.
Not a
No knockout power out of that guy.
Not a Paul Craig fan at all.
I get it. He's going to be Johnny Walker though. But Jamal Hill, Glover Teixeira. Glover is the smarter of the two fighters, more experienced. How does this fight play out? What do you think happens, Cottrell? I know you're a Glover guy. Tell me that Glover wins this fight in a boring fashion.
I'm not necessarily a Glover guy. I got a lot more respect for Glover. One, after he won the belt, and then two, how he defended the belt against Yuri. Obviously, he lost the belt in that fight against Yuri, but he just showed me that I had always had respect for him, but that gave me a newfound respect for him those last two fights that he had. With that said, I don't think Jamal Hill has faced anyone with the caliber, wrestling and jiu-jitsu that Glover Teixeira has, So I think that you're going to have Glover get in those positions where he gets Jamal Hill to the ground. And, in the times that they are face-to-face and they're in the middle of the octagon, I think Glover's going to be able to strike with Jamal Hill. Glover just has to be weary of that knockout power. And I think Jamal Hill is more technical than what Yuri is, but power-wise, I think they're very close and in the same ballpark. So I think he just has to be weary of Jamal Hill's power. And outside of that, though, I think Glover Teixeira is gonna take care of business in this one.
I disagree. Bill, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. There's no camera.
There's no camera. I don't know what the hell's going on with it. Tired of it.
Well, who do you got in this one?
I like Glover as well. The only thing that's for pretty much all the reasons that Cottrell said, I think the only thing that gives me any kind of pause is, to Gene's point earlier about him being 58. He's really not 58, but was the Yuri loss, a silly mistake, or was it kind of, signs of what's to come and, this starting to be like the eventual, like actual, like really decline and downfall of Glover? It's the only thing that gives me pause. I think his fighting's concerned. I think he's got more experience. I think he's got more ways to win. And I just think he's the better, well-rounded fighter. I think he'll win. I'll go 4th round sub. I don't think it's lopsided. I know you want to jump in here. I don't think it's lopsided. I think it's close. I think Jamal Hill's a good fighter. I think he definitely has weapons and he has ways to win. I land hometown. I really like Glover's experience here to go back in, have a safer game plan, not fight a little silly like he did against Yuri. And I think he gets this done and gets his hand raised. Like I said, the only thing I'm worried about is, maybe he just had this, burst of 2 or 3 great fights at the end of his career. And now he's kind of coming back down to earth. So I don't want to see him lose in front of his hometown, because I feel like if he does, it might be a retirement type situation. So I'm hoping against that. So I'll pick Glover 4th round submission.
I don't want to pick Jamal Hill because I can't think of Jamal Hill as being the new champion. I think that Glover can win this fight on the ground. Jamal Hill's only loss is to Paul Craig, who basically locked him against the cage and then broke his elbow in the fight, which is literally why it got TKO stopped. But I think Jamal Hill knocks him out. I think Glover walks into a right. I think that Jamal Hill's entire camp had to be make sure you don't get taken down to the ground. Make sure you don't get locked up. He's much quicker than Glover is. Glover's obviously way more crafty. But when I look at these two guys fight, I think Jamal Hill in a 5-round fight, if he doesn't get stopped, if he doesn't get caught with one of those subs, I think Jamal Hill eventually knocks Glover out. He's got way more power than Yuri.
See, I disagree with that. And then two, you talked about his whole camp being, you can't get taken down. I think that also kind of plays into why I'm picking Glover in this one, is because Jamal Hill, this whole time, he wasn't in camp to fight Glover Teixeira. Jamal Hill was supposed to be fighting Anthony Lionheart Smith, but because of that whole debacle in the light heavyweight for the vacant light heavyweight belt, Dana had just had to scramble and put a fight together so that that division wouldn't have a vacant championship in it. So Glover really wasn't preparing for necessarily anybody, but Jamal Hill was in camp, but a lot of his preparation was for Anthony Smith. And I just don't think, there isn't enough comparison from Glover to Smith to where what went into your camp is going to be advantageous for you in this fight coming up. So obviously he's had time to get ready for Glover and things like that, but this isn't a normal camp thing for either one of these guys.
Solid point. I can't argue with that point. It's too good of a point. It is, because I forgot that it was only signed 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it literally just got signed right after the light heavyweight championship ended in a draw. So
look, no, I can't argue with that. I think that I still think Jamal Hill wins the fight. I think Glover's too slow, and I think that this is his retirement fight. I really believe that. I'm ready to see the end of Glover Teixeira.
I completely understand that. Other thing too is that this is the first guy that for Jamal Hill where he's taken that next step up in talent. Obviously, the light heavyweight division is, if not the worst, it's one of the worst divisions in the sport. And this is his first time going up against that true test. Obviously, he lost against Paul Craig, but Paul Craig's not one of those elite guys in this division. Glover is that top guy, and this will be a true test for him. So we'll see how quickly Jamal Hill can get adjusted to that.
Okay, let's move on to You Got to Be Kidding Me, gentlemen. Control, what great one do you have for us this week?
I turned myself off instead of turning off the graphic.
I got the graphic. I got it.
Yeah, see, you're messing me up here, Gene.
No, you turned yourself off, so I turned the graphic off for you, and then you turned it back on.
Yeah, you got me
blaming it on me. I don't like it. I don't like it. Don't blame it on me.
You got me all disheveled, man. You hitting buttons, and I'm hitting the wrong buttons, and we're just button mashers.
I'm still sitting in the dark over here.
Yeah,
dancing in the dark.
We just got BS on the screen.
BS.
That's all Bill's full of. Bullshit.
Most of the time.
All right, give me your You Got to Be Kidding Me this week, Cottrell.
My You Got to Be Kidding Me this week, it actually stems from a lot of what we just talked about, the UFC. And I'm not gonna finger point and say who's right, who's wrong, but it's really sad that we're not going to be able to see Francis Ngannou in the UFC anymore. And for those of you that don't know, Francis he was the heavyweight champion in the UFC, and in his last fight, he was injured. He had a knee injury in both knees, and so he took some time away. There was also one of the last fights. He only had one fight left on his deal, and the UFC was trying to negotiate and get things together, get a new contract for Francis, but Francis had other plans. Francis wanted to have some boxing matches, make some more money. He also wanted a raise just in the UFC in general. He was just on Ariel Helwani's podcast, basically saying that he asked the UFC for health insurance to cover him, and he also asked for sponsorships, which the UFC doesn't allow anymore. And the UFC basically told him that's just not how they operate. So for me this week, it's just sad that we can't see the top heavyweight guy, especially in a time frame where John Jones is moving up to the heavyweight division, going up against Cyril Gane. Stipe looks like he's going to be coming back. It would have been great to have your champion there, and that knockout power that we haven't seen in a really long time in that heavyweight division. So for me this week, the UFC and Francis Ngannou.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Bill?
I'm going to do a silly one this week. It's kind of funny. Cottrell knows what I'm about to say. My You Gotta Be Kidding Me this week is going to be from my fantasy football league. It's going to be Mr. Kurt Hensman. Dear friend of mine, Jeans as well. But we started a keeper league this year, and we had a punishment for the loser of the league, and it was a really simple one. We thought it was fun. It wasn't too crazy. It was the first year of the league, and it was nothing more than the waffle challenge. If you're not familiar with it, the waffle challenge is we didn't even do the 24, we did the 12. So waffle challenge is you have to eat 12 waffles. Every waffle you eat, you get to take an hour off the time. That you get to sit there and have to do it. Kurt has come up with every excuse in the world to not do this. He's completely bailed out of doing the punishment. I'm a little disappointed. In Kurt, but I just want to keep it lighthearted this week. So this week for me, Kurt Hensman.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
I've been begging for like a losers. Like I really want to be in a league that has like a last place punishment. I want to be in that. Like I want to have that feeling of like I don't want this to happen. Like I'll do the 24-hour waffle challenge if I get last place. I don't care. I'll do whatever we have to do, and we'll broadcast wire to wire from there. Like I don't.
Same.
That's what I'll do.
I'm with you there.
So that's on you, Kurt. You gotta do the waffle challenge. That's very sad. I'm very sad to hear that. My good friend Kurt not doing the waffle challenge. All right, so for me this week, it's the Chargers organization. And I kind of hinted to this earlier, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Do you guys remember how awesome Justin Herbert looked his rookie year, how he won Rookie of the Year and stormed on the scene, how promising the future looked for the Los Angeles Chargers? So am I the only one to remember that? Because I remember a coach getting fired after that game, like after Tyrod Taylor went down early in the season due to a medical mispractice. Justin Herbert came in and looked incredible and won the Rookie of the Year. Normally, that would give you another year with that quarterback, right? After you've shown them of what you can do. Charger organization fired Anthony Lynn and hired Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley has now been there and have underperformed what they've said they were going to do the last 3 seasons. Last 2 seasons. You look at the Chargers and the fact that Trevor Lawrence won a playoff game before Justin Herbert did, after the rookie campaign he has, after all the talent that's in that locker room, after the debacle that Brandon Staley had last year when they could have been tied and he called the timeout and the Raiders beat them. After what happened this year, getting most of their players back, you have your left tackle getting ready to come back for next week. They opened this practice window. You're up 27-0 over Jacksonville, who has no huge big threat receiver or player on the team. And then they scapegoat the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach. What are we doing? I don't understand. How is that what you're doing? Brandon Staley remains his job. Sean Payton is begging to go there and coach this young man. You have an organization that could legitimately be the best team in football for 3 to 5 years with the right coaching staff. They have so much talent. They've hit on their draft picks. Asante Samuel Jr. has been, if not the best cornerback in the class, a top 3 cornerback in that class, 100% in a loaded cornerback class. Please help me understand why Anthony Lynn gets the short end of the straw, but Brandon Staley gets another opportunity. Please help me understand how you blow a 27-0 lead in a playoff game. Justin Herbert scores 3 points in the second half. Please help me understand that you are sitting at home without a playoff win, why a team that had the number 1 draft pick last year is playing this weekend. I can't understand it. I'm so shocked that he is still coaching in the NFL. And if I was a Chargers fan, like my man Jake Silva is, I would be rioting. Wouldn't happen in Philly, I'll tell you that. So for that, this week, the Chargers organization.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Gentlemen, any fun final thoughts this week?
I don't really have any. I think Australian Open is already kicked off, and I don't know if Bill's going to get into it, but Rafa Nadal is already out. Got bounced
Smoked.
straight set. So outside of, I mean, obviously you got Joker and Medvedev still in it, but it's really open without the defending champion being there. So it's about to get real interesting.
He's the only big men's guy to lose. The women's, there was a couple upsets yesterday, but Coco had a really big win early this morning against Emma Raducanu. So she's on to the third round. She looks good. Iga's looking good. Our predictions are holding up well. What did you actually, Kuchel, did you take Rafa again?
No, I took Iga and Joker.
Okay. Yeah, so show's predictions are looking well. I've actually won more of a shout out type thing. Gene, I think it's like we've been very lucky, like on the show, to like have so many people share our stuff and help us grow, and we've had a lot of friends that have embraced our success and want to see us do good, and I think that's something really important. Like if you truly care about somebody and you want to be their friend, you should want to see them do good. I know Gene posts about positivity and things like that all the time, and it's something that you really should believe in. My buddy Dave Palman, who Gene knows, met him a couple years ago, started playing softball for me. Dude has worked his ass off the last couple years on betting on himself and switching jobs until he finally found the right one, and the one that he wanted to keep. And a little bit of luck finally broke his way. 2 weeks ago, he just got the head chef job at a new restaurant in Phoenixville called Mansion House 37 or 27. Sorry. It's at 37 Bridge Street in Phoenixville. My man is the head chef there. He created the menu. I know I'm going to go up there in a couple weeks and check it out. I just wanted to say congratulations to him. Go in there, see him. If you're in there, tell him you know me, say hi, or tell him you know Gene, Cottrell, whoever. Go in, check him out, give him a try, check out the food. Dude works his ass off. He's a great guy. And I really hope the restaurant has a lot of success. They're open Wednesday through Sunday for dinner, and they also have a Sunday brunch menu. So if you're in the area, Mansion House 22nd, check it out. And like I said, say hi to Dave.
I can't. Can I go with you? Can we schedule
Sure.
a time where me and you go together?
Sure.
You guys gonna go get
It's not a
mimosas?
romantic place. Like I don't have to hold your hand, right?
No. It's. I mean, I looked at the pictures. He said it's a really relaxed vibe. I don't think it's too upscale or anything. I think it's.
I love
kinda
Dave.
has-
Dave is one of my favorite teammates I've ever played with. I'm dead serious when I say that. I
He
love
is an-
Dave. Dave is like me in a sense that like he just competition, bro. He loves it, and you're not going to shit talk him.
Nope.
Such a fun guy to play with, but awesome person, and I'm sure he's going to be an incredible chef there. So I can't wait. So I'm going. When can we go?
We'll go.
Text
We
me.
can go. All right.
Hey,
That's all
Eric
I
said
got.
he'll go too. It's his neck of the woods.
All right.
Yeah, let's go. You can come hang out with us. We're going. So, show 119. I want to give a special shout for Kelsey Nicole Nelson for hopping on the show. She was awesome. Yeah, you can tell why she was DC Media Person of the Year. She kicked ass. She knows her stuff, and it's so cool to watch more and more people grow in the industry. And her hopping on our show helps us, and I really appreciate her hopping on here. And
I had so much fun talking to her.
Bill had a great conversation with her.
Did.
Just kidding. But it was a fun show. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier with Bill and how you can't see his beautiful face. I know that's why you tune into the show, is to see Bill Shawcross's face. But for that, this week, show 119, Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, we are signing out.